A satisfied grin slowly spread across Joo-Heon's face. Forget the money, that relic knife would soon belong to him as well. Unable to contain his rage any longer, Kyung-tae charged forward with the blade raised high, fully intending to kill his former subordinate in a single strike. But Joo-Heon calmly sidestepped at the last possible second. The knife sliced through nothing but empty air. Before Kyung-tae could recover, Joo-Heon grabbed his wrist and twisted it with surprising force. Pain shot through Kyung-tae's arm as his balance crumbled. Looking almost disappointed, Joo-Heon remarked that he admired Kyung-tae's courage. After all, not many people were foolish enough to point a relic at him, forcing the knife's edge against Kyung-tae's throat. Seeing their boss completely overpowered, the surrounding gang members rushed forward to rescue him. In one swift motion, Joo-Heon snatched the relic knife from Kyung-tae's grasp. Holding it up before his eyes, he smiled. "Let me show you how it's actually supposed to be used." The moment he activated the relic, a mysterious blue mist wrapped itself around the blade. A strange light flashed across his eyes. Instantly, the world around him changed. The relic's power allowed him to see straight through the human body. Every gangster standing before him appeared as nothing more than exposed skeletons, covered with muscles, tendons, and internal organs. Every movement of their bodies became crystal clear. Just as the gang members prepared to attack, Joo-Heon's body suddenly began to dissolve into thin air. One moment he was standing there. The next, he had vanished completely. The gangsters froze in confusion, frantically looking around. Before anyone could figure it out, a sharp blade suddenly cut across several of their shoulders from behind. Cries of pain echoed through the street. Looking down at the relic knife, Joo-Heon couldn't help but grin. So it has another ability. Not only could it reveal the internal structure of living beings, but it also granted its wielder the power to conceal their presence. One of the gang members screamed in terror, insisting that the former subordinate had literally disappeared. Another man clutched his bleeding shoulder, shouting that he'd been cut. Holding the knife casually in front of him, Joo-Heon looked at the terrified gang with a calm smile. "So far, I've only given you a few scratches." His expression instantly turned cold. "But things can get much worse. If you don't want to die, hand over every last bit of the money." His icy voice sent chills down everyone's spine. Even Kyung-tae, whose nose was now bleeding from the earlier struggle, could only grit his teeth in frustration. His injured men silently nodded. Defeated, Kyung-tae reluctantly agreed to hand over everything. Night soon fell over the city. Stars shimmered above the sprawling metropolis, while lights glowed from the windows of countless buildings. Inside one of those buildings, a bright sign illuminated the entrance, as Kwon Kyung-ja stood holding her phone with an expression of complete disbelief. She couldn't believe what she had just heard. Her own subordinate had single-handedly defeated Kyung-tae's entire gang and stolen every bit of their money. To her, the story sounded completely absurd. There is absolutely no way that happened, she shouted through the phone. On the other end, Kyung-tae shut his eyes in frustration. Even he still couldn't understand what had happened. Yesterday, that kid barely knew how to throw a proper punch. But today, he had transformed into someone entirely different. Just remembering those cold eyes and overwhelming confidence sent a chill down Kyung-tae's spine. There had been something frightening in that boy's gaze. Trying to stay calm, Kyung-ja rubbed her forehead before asking the question that mattered most. How much did he take? Scratching the back of his head awkwardly, Kyung-tae admitted that Joo-Heon had taken everything. Not only the cash, but also the sample product they had been preparing for their upcoming deal. She cursed her useless brother before asking another urgent question. Did he take the Buddha statue too? Meanwhile, completely unaware of the panic he had caused, Joo-Heon calmly counted the stacks of money he had just collected. Looking down at the terrified gang members kneeling before him, he casually asked if they had anything else worth taking. The men exchanged nervous glances before timidly shaking their heads. Joo-Heon slowly turned toward Kyung-tae. His smile remained friendly, but his eyes weren't smiling at all. "If I find out you're hiding something, you're going to regret it." The threat alone was enough to make every gangster shudder. Just then, Joo-Heon's attention landed on a beautiful golden Buddha statue resting nearby. His eyes immediately lit up. It looked incredibly expensive. The moment Kyung-tae realized what he was looking at, his face turned pale. "Don't touch that." Ignoring the desperate plea, Joo-Heon simply smiled. "If you're begging me not to take it, then it must be worth quite a bit." Without another word, he picked up the statue. Kyung-tae nearly lost his mind. He desperately shouted for him to stop and demanded that he return the Buddha immediately. But Joo-Heon didn't even bother looking back. He simply walked away, carrying the statue under one arm. Back inside the office, Kyung-ja's face darkened the moment she heard the news. He took the Buddha too? Holding the phone nervously against his ear, Kyung-tae could only nod despite knowing she couldn't see him. With fury written all over her face, Kyung-ja ordered him to recover the statue immediately. No matter what it took, that Buddha had to be brought back. The following day, Joo-Heon walked into a nearby pawn shop carrying the golden Buddha statue. After examining it for several minutes, the appraiser casually placed it back on the table. With an indifferent shrug, he declared that the statue wasn't even worth 50,000 won. In fact, he suggested it would probably serve better as nothing more than a decorative ornament sitting on someone's shelf. Joo-Heon blinked in disbelief. How is that possible? The appraiser waved his hand dismissively. He explained that after years of experience, he could tell at a single glance whether something had value. According to him, nobody would ever pay serious money for that statue. Leaving the shop, Joo-Heon couldn't help but frown. Something didn't add up. Kyung-tae had acted as though this Buddha was worth millions. There was no way someone would panic over an ordinary ornament worth only 50,000 won. As he walked through the city streets, Joo-Heon let out a tired yawn. He stared at the Buddha statue in his hands. Maybe my appraisal ability failed, he muttered. After all, he still lacked a proper archaeological relic that could accurately identify hidden treasures. Just then, something strange caught his eye. A faint purple aura was leaking from inside the Buddha. Joo-Heon immediately stopped walking. Before he could react, a transparent notification window suddenly appeared in front of him. Reconnaissance skill activated suspicious object detected inside the statue. He blinked in surprise. Out of habit, he tried swiping the floating window away, but the notification remained. There really is something inside. Curious, he gently shook the Buddha. Faint rattling sound echoed from within. A grin slowly spread across Joo-Heon's face. So that's why Kyung-tae was so desperate. There was no way he'd lose his mind over something worth 50,000 won. Without hesitation, he pulled out the relic knife he had taken the previous night. If something valuable was hidden inside, there was only one way to find out. With a swift strike, the Buddha statue shattered into dozens of pieces. A nearby pedestrian stopped in shock, staring with his mouth hanging open as someone casually destroyed what appeared to be a golden statue in broad daylight. Among the broken fragments, a small glass bottle rolled onto the pavement. Joo-Heon picked it up and carefully examined its contents. His expression immediately changed. Inside was a highly concentrated liquid narcotic designed to be dripped onto cigarettes before smoking. Realization instantly dawned on him. So that's it. Kyung-tae hadn't been running an antique business at all. He had been using the statues to smuggle illegal drugs. Glancing around carefully, Joo-Heon couldn't help but think that every single decorative item in Kyung-tae's collection was probably stuffed with the same expensive narcotics. No wonder the man had been so desperate to recover the Buddha. With a knowing smile, Joo-Heon pulled out his phone. There was no reason to keep this discovery to himself. He immediately called one of his trusted contacts. Joo-Heon remembered something important. The government was currently offering a reward of nearly 100 million won to anyone who reported a major drug smuggling operation. Evening had settled over the city, and the lights inside the office were still burning brightly. The atmosphere was tense as Kwon Kyung-ja stood with a phone pressed against her ear, desperately trying to calm the furious person on the other end of the call. She insisted that the delay wasn't because the shipment wasn't ready. They simply couldn't move the goods yet. Someone had been following them, and making a move now would only expose their entire operation. The furious shouting coming from the phone was so loud that she instinctively closed her eyes. Turning away from everyone in the room, she apologized and promised that she would contact them again soon before ending the call. The moment the line disconnected, her expression twisted with frustration. A man sat quietly behind her, watching her reaction. Clicking her tongue, Kyung-ja cursed under her breath. She complained that she had absolutely no reason to keep all of the money for herself, yet everyone kept acting as though she had betrayed them. Just then, she heard movement behind her. Turning around, she froze. Standing in the doorway was her older brother. He wasn't alone. His face was swollen and covered in bruises. His wrists were locked in handcuffs, and 2 police officers stood behind him. Her expression instantly changed. What happened? Kyung-tae lowered his head with a defeated expression. The situation couldn't possibly get any worse. Before he could explain further, one of the officers stepped forward and presented his identification. Detective Jinwoo calmly introduced himself before explaining that they were investigating a large-scale illegal drug trafficking operation. Kyung-ja immediately spread her arms in protest. There must be some misunderstanding. The detective simply smiled. Holding up a bag containing the bottle recovered from the Buddha statue, he casually replied that criminals always tried to come up with excuses after they had already been caught red-handed. Then, his expression became serious. This isn't the only evidence. We're also investigating your storage facilities. Are the rest of the drugs hidden inside the warehouse? Kyung-ja silently gritted her teeth. Inside, however, she remained surprisingly calm. So they found out about the warehouse in Jongdo. That's fine. Every warehouse has its own access code. There's no way they'll be able to open them all. Confident in that fact, she crossed her arms and stared directly at the detective. If you don't have stronger evidence, then stop making false accusations. She reminded him that even the police had no right to interfere with a legitimate business without proper proof. For a brief moment, everything remained silent. Then, the radio clip to Detective Jung-woo's shoulder suddenly crackled to life. A voice echoed through the speaker. "Report, we've completed the inspection. Illegal narcotics have been discovered inside all 600 exhibits stored at Hwasong Art Gallery." The room fell silent. Kyung-ja's confident expression completely disappeared. The officers immediately moved in and secured her in handcuffs. Still struggling to process what she had just heard, she demanded to know how they had managed to open every storage room. Detective Jung-woo simply smiled. Closing his eyes for a brief moment, he answered calmly, "We had some help. Someone on the inside cooperated with us." Earlier that day, Joo-Heon had personally accompanied the police to the warehouse. One of the employees pointed toward a locked storage room and explained that the door had always remained sealed. Without saying a word, Joo-Heon walked straight toward it. He entered the password. Click! The heavy door unlocked immediately. The officers behind him looked at each other in confusion. One of them couldn't help but ask how he knew the password. Joo-Heon simply smiled. "I have a very good memory." It wasn't false modesty. His phenomenal memory had always been his greatest natural talent. Ironically, that very ability was one of the reasons Kyung-ja had hired him in the first place. Back when he worked for her company, he had been responsible for transporting goods between countless storage facilities. Each warehouse used a completely different security code. At first, it had been incredibly frustrating. Eventually, tired of constantly asking for passwords, he secretly wrote every single one down and memorized them all. At the time, it had simply been a way to make his job easier. He never imagined that one day, those same passwords would become the key to destroying the entire organization. One storage room after another, the police unlocked every door. Each room revealed exactly what Joo-Heon had expected. Boxes filled with expensive artifacts, each one secretly hiding illegal narcotics. Watching the officers uncover more evidence with every room they opened, Joo-Heon quietly smiled to himself. Everything was unfolding exactly according to his plan. Once the authorities finished their investigation, he would receive the enormous reward money, and with that money, he could finally begin hunting relics in earnest. One of the officers picked up another bottle and immediately confirmed that it contained drugs. Another officer shook his head in disbelief. These smugglers became far too confident. Turning toward Joo-Heon, the officer smiled. "You did the right thing by reporting this." Joo-Heon simply nodded. "I'm glad I could help." Then he hesitated for a moment before making one small request. The detective looked at him curiously. "What is it?" Meanwhile, Kyung-ja struggled furiously as the officers restrained her. She screamed that none of this made any sense and demanded to be released immediately. Just then, Detective Jung-woo's phone rang. After answering the call, he listened for a few seconds before looking back at her. Then he smiled. "My assistant wants to say something." He held the phone toward her. The moment she heard the familiar voice coming through the speaker, her face darkened. It was Joo-Heon. With a relaxed smile, he spoke into the phone. "You really should have treated your employees better." Kyung-ja's eyes narrowed with fury. Joo-Heon continued speaking. "And maybe you should have paid their salaries on time." Her eyes widened. "So this was all because of you?" Joo-Heon chuckled softly. "No, you just should have changed your warehouse passwords more often." Before ending the call, he left her with one final sentence. "Enjoy your stay in prison." The line disconnected. Kyung-ja completely lost control. Fighting against the officers holding her back, she screamed at the top of her lungs, "I'll kill you." Later that night, the city had grown quiet. Only the lights shining from apartment windows illuminated the streets as Joo-Heon casually walked home. His phone suddenly vibrated. He pulled it from his pocket and smiled after seeing the sender's name. It was Detective Jung-woo. The detective thanked him once again for helping expose the smuggling operation and informed him that the government reward for assisting with the investigation would be processed soon. Reading the messages, Joo-Heon couldn't help but smile. Jung-woo had always looked out for him. Soon, he would finally have the startup capital he desperately needed. Once he received the reward money, he could begin searching for relic tombs much sooner than expected, and after that, his future would finally begin to change. His smile slowly faded as another face appeared in his mind. Tae-jin, his former enemy. Joo-Heon's eyes hardened. "Just wait, I'll settle the score with you soon enough." Suddenly, he stopped walking. His eyes widened in disbelief. Standing on top of a small hill, he stared toward the neighborhood where his house was supposed to be. Then his face froze. What? Where did my house go? The entire residential district had disappeared. In its place stood an enormous mountain of golden sand stretching high into the sky. An ancient tomb had suddenly emerged from beneath the earth, swallowing the entire neighborhood in the process. Chaos erupted everywhere. Residents cried in confusion. Some people burst into tears after realizing their homes had vanished. Others began arguing with one another, ignoring the panic surrounding him. Joo-Heon quietly walked past the gathering crowd, his eyes fixed on the massive tomb towering before him. Unlike everyone else, he understood exactly what this meant. These people were terrified because this was the first time they had witnessed something like this. But Joo-Heon knew the truth. This was only the beginning. Soon, mysterious tombs would continue appearing across the entire world. Memories from his previous life came flooding back. He remembered exactly how everything had unfolded the first time. Back then, he had still been working under Kyung-tae. Kyung-tae had received a mysterious phone call. At the time, Joo-Heon hadn't thought much of it. When he finally returned home later that evening, everything had looked completely normal. The apartment buildings were still standing. Lights shone from every window, and there wasn't a single grain of sand in sight. Relieved, he had assumed nothing unusual had happened. Only much later did he learn the truth. A tomb had actually appeared in his neighborhood that very day. Someone had discovered it, entered it, cleared it, and made it disappear within just a few hours, before ordinary civilians ever realized it had existed. Now, standing before the massive tomb once again, after regressing to the past, Joo-Heon finally understood. Whoever had claimed that relic the first time was somewhere among the crowd right now, and this time, he had absolutely no intention of letting anyone beat him to it. Suddenly, loud shouting echoed through the streets. "Don't shoot." Joo-Heon turned toward the commotion. A soldier in full camouflage gear had raised his assault rifle and was pointing it directly at an unarmed civilian. Recognizing the terrified man immediately, Joo-Heon realized it was one of his neighbors. The soldier barked at everyone nearby. "Everyone stay where you are. Stop panicking and keep quiet." Without the slightest hesitation, Joo-Heon walked straight over. Before anyone could react, bam! His foot shot upward and slammed directly into the soldier's chin. The soldier was launched backward before crashing onto the ground. Silence instantly fell over the crowd. Everyone stared at Joo-Heon with their mouths hanging open. Even his neighbor, Kim, looked completely dumbfounded. Joo-Heon frowned at the fallen soldier. "What gives you the right to wave a machine gun around at civilians?" Then, as if nothing had happened, he turned toward Kim with a friendly smile. "It's been a while." Kim blinked in confusion. "What are you talking about? We literally saw each other a few days ago." From Joo-Heon's perspective, however, it truly had been a very long time. The soldier slowly climbed back to his feet while rubbing his aching jaw. Another soldier rushed over in concern. "Are you all right?" The dazed soldier wiped the blood from his mouth before apologizing awkwardly. "I don't know what came over me." Sweat trickled down his face as he tried to regain his composure. Ignoring the awkward atmosphere, Joo-Heon casually placed his hands on his hips. "So, why has the military mobilized so quickly?" That was the question bothering him the most. Had the Korean government already learned about the tombs, or were they simply reacting to an unexplained disaster? Standing among the frightened civilians, Joo-Heon continued questioning the soldier. "Have your troops already entered the tomb?" The soldier immediately stiffened. "I'm not authorized to discuss military operations." Joo-Heon simply looked away. So they're keeping everything confidential. His priority now wasn't gathering information anymore. It was getting inside the tomb before the government did. Straightening his posture, he spoke loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. "This is our neighborhood. The residents deserve to know why soldiers carrying assault rifles suddenly surrounded our homes." The soldiers exchanged nervous glances. Joo-Heon then added another layer of pressure. "If necessary, I'll make sure your superiors hear about what happened here today." The soldiers visibly panicked, not wanting unnecessary trouble. One of them sighed before finally giving in. "We're here to destroy the structure. But before that, we have to recover something from inside. Don't worry, no civilians will be harmed." Joo-Heon stroked his chin thoughtfully. "Destroy it? So the government doesn't even understand what a tomb really is yet." The soldier continued speaking. "We've brought several scientists with us. They know much more about this phenomenon. Everything should go smoothly." Hearing that, Joo-Heon's understanding of the situation became much clearer. The government was completely inexperienced. They were blindly following the advice of researchers who understood almost nothing about relics. Smiling politely, he nodded. Thanks, you've been very helpful. The soldier scratched the back of his head awkwardly. Joo-Heon simply waved as he walked away. Good luck. The confused soldier even thanked him before realizing how strange that conversation had been. Kim hurried after Joo-Heon. Did you learn anything useful? Joo-Heon shook his head. Not really. For now, all we can do is wait. Kim raised both hands in confusion. Wait? Before he could ask another question, Joo-Heon had already disappeared into the crowd. Watching him leave, Kim scratched his head. Why is he acting so differently today? Near the massive tomb, only a handful of people were allowed past the military barricade. Among them stood a blonde woman named Linda Walker. Keeping her eyes on the soldiers, she raised a phone to her ear. Double-check all the intelligence. By now, the Korean government should know something about these tombs. A voice answered from the other side. Our sources confirm they know absolutely nothing. Linda slowly looked around at the large military presence surrounding the area. Strange. If they don't know anything, why are there soldiers everywhere? The voice calmly reassured her. Everything is proceeding according to plan. Continue following protocol, and whatever happens, do not discuss the existence of the tombs. The information remains top secret. Linda nodded. Understood. The man then asked for a status update. Walking toward the excavation site, Linda smiled confidently. The explosives have already been planted. We're ready to breach the entrance whenever the order is given. Excellent, the voice continued. Maintain protocol. And remember, every relic must be recovered safely. The call ended. Almost immediately afterward, another person approached her. It was a curly-haired Japanese man named Abe. Smiling politely, he greeted her. So, it seems America isn't the only country hoping to profit from this new era. His eyes narrowed slightly. I honestly didn't expect the CIA to arrive before us. It must have been quite the flight. Linda returned his smile, though there wasn't a trace of warmth behind it. Inside, she couldn't hide her irritation. These Japanese rats really move fast. Placing both hands on her hips, she answered confidently. Unlike your organization, the United States isn't collecting relics for selfish gain. Our purpose is scientific research. We intend to study these artifacts and use them for the benefit of the entire world. She maintained a perfectly diplomatic smile. Our goal is international cooperation. Abe simply smiled back, but both of them understood the truth. Neither side had traveled halfway across the world out of kindness. If America is really doing this for the good of humanity, he mocked, then why is the CIA making sure no one else gets anywhere near these relics? Linda remained calm. And what makes you so certain that's our intention? Abe simply spread his arms. Let's stop pretending. We both know why we're here. Instead of wasting time talking, let's see who reaches the relic first. Linda let out a quiet laugh. Then I wish you the best of luck. The two exchanged polite smiles, but neither trusted the other for a second. Hidden behind a nearby corner, Joo-Heon had been silently observing the entire exchange. So those two really were representatives of the CIA and the Japanese excavation team. Just as he remembered, his eyes shifted toward the enormous mountain of sand towering over the city. Its surface was covered with gigantic carved human faces. Although tombs had already begun appearing around the world, only a handful of powerful governments knew the truth. Soldiers surrounded the massive sand mountain, while excavation teams carried sealed containers filled with relics recovered from previous tombs. From the very beginning, only the world's strongest nations had competed for ownership of these treasures. The United States, Japan, and a few other global powers had secretly established specialized excavation units whose sole purpose was to locate tombs, clear them before anyone else, and claim every relic hidden inside. Watching everything unfold from the shadows, Joo-Heon narrowed his eyes. Not this time. That relic belongs to me. As Linda stepped forward to continue arguing with Abe, Joo-Heon quietly slipped away. The two foreign organizations were too busy trying to outmaneuver each other to notice him. A satisfied smile appeared across his face. Perfect. While they're distracted, I'll clear the tomb before either side even realizes what happened. He chuckled to himself. They never had a chance. Without another moment of hesitation, Joo-Heon stepped toward the tomb. The instant his foot touched the ground, ancient glyphs suddenly burst into existence beneath him. Countless glowing hieroglyphs spread across the road in a massive circular pattern. Their mysterious light illuminated the dark streets. Rather than being surprised, Joo-Heon smiled. To him, relics weren't simply lifeless objects. They possessed their own will. Almost like living beings, they longed to be discovered, to be acknowledged, to choose worthy owners. Looking at the glowing symbols beneath his feet, Joo-Heon couldn't help but think, these relics really do see themselves as the main characters of history. The civilians nearby immediately panicked. Very few people in the world understood their true purpose. Those capable of reading these ancient glyphs could uncover the tomb's greatest secrets. The runes revealed hidden passages, deadly traps, secret chambers, and sometimes even the exact path leading straight to the relic itself. Unfortunately, almost nobody could actually decipher them. But Joo-Heon wasn't almost nobody. The moment his fingers touched the glowing symbols, a brilliant flash erupted before his eyes. One translucent purple notification after another appeared in the air. New title acquired, new skill, unlocked young linguist skill effect, grants the ability to understand and analyze ancient languages. Decipher unknown scripts, and interpret tomb glyphs. Another notification followed immediately afterward. The new skill quietly settled into his growing list of abilities. Joo-Heon casually waved his hand, dismissing every floating window. He quietly reminded himself that there were still 2 more essential skills he needed before everything truly began. Nearby pedestrians stared at him in confusion as he repeatedly waved his hand through empty air. To everyone else, it looked like he was simply talking to himself. Following the directions hidden within the glyphs, Joo-Heon eventually reached the riverside that cut through the city. Near the embankment stood a single ancient stone pillar. Its entire surface was covered with glowing hieroglyphs. Standing before it with both hands in his pockets, Joo-Heon smiled confidently. So this is the entrance. Without hesitation, he pulled out the relic knife he had stolen earlier, swinging it once he drove the blade directly into the pillar. The instant the knife pierced the stone, every glyph began shining with overwhelming brilliance. A blinding pillar of light shot into the night sky, illuminating the entire city. Holding the knife tightly, Joo-Heon prepared himself. It's time for a tomb raider to go to work. Suddenly, another purple notification appeared before him, warning an unknown entity is approaching. At the same moment, the ground beneath the pillar violently cracked apart. A massive gateway slowly opened beneath his feet as an enormous column of light erupted into the heavens. The explosion of light instantly caught everyone's attention. Not far away, Abe stared toward the sky in complete disbelief. Where is that light coming from? One of his subordinates came running. Someone opened the tomb. Without another word, Abe sprinted toward the source of the light. Linda quickly called after him. Where are you going? Ignoring her completely, Abe continued running. Both foreign teams raced toward the mysterious gateway. We should wait for backup, Linda warned. Abe didn't even slow down. They'll only get in my way. Moments later, they finally reached the source of the light. A massive hole had opened in the earth. At its center stood the entrance to the tomb. Peering into the endless darkness below, Abe frowned. I can't see anything. The light's too bright. Linda picked up a nearby stone and tossed it into the abyss. The two quietly listened. Several seconds later, splash, Abe pointed downward. There's water. Linda nodded. And judging by the sound, it's a very deep pool. Before she could stop him, Abe jumped. What are you doing? Linda shouted in panic. But he had already disappeared into the darkness. Far below, Joo-Heon was already making his way deeper into the tomb. An underground river flowed beside the narrow stone pathway. Then, he heard footsteps. Someone had entered after him. Lighting the ancient walls with a small lighter, Joo-Heon smiled mischievously. Looks like my guests have arrived. Maybe I'll have a little fun. Ahead of him lay the tomb's very first trial. Every wall was completely covered with glowing glyphs. After surviving the fall, Abe dragged himself onto the muddy shore. The foul smell immediately assaulted his senses. What an awful stench. Moments later, Linda climbed down using a rope. I was trying to warn you about that. Before either of them could continue, a strange rumbling echoed throughout the cave. They immediately froze. Linda switched on her flashlight. Where did that sound come from? Abe narrowed his eyes. Something's coming. Suddenly, an enormous wall of water burst from deep inside the cavern. What the? Neither of them had time to react. The tidal wave raced toward them with unstoppable force. They turned and ran, but it was already too late. The flood swallowed both agents whole. Linda vanished beneath the raging current. Abe barely managed to raise one hand above the water as he desperately fought for air. Meanwhile, Joo-Heon calmly continued walking deeper into the tomb, completely undisturbed. Eventually, an intense light shone ahead. He stepped into a breathtaking underground grotto. Crystal clear blue water stretched across the cavern like a mirror. Looking at the relic knife in his hand, he smiled. Good thing I brought you along. Without hesitation, he threw the knife into the water. Ripples spread across the lake. Moments later, the water exploded upward. A gigantic white serpent slowly emerged from the depths. Its enormous golden eyes locked onto Joo-Heon. The creature opened its mouth. Inside rested 2 identical knives. One was made entirely of gold, the other pure silver. An ancient voice echoed throughout the cavern. Traveler, you have lost your blade. Tell me, which one belongs to you? The golden knife or the silver one? Joo-Heon couldn't help but grin. He immediately recognized the trial. The Tomb of the Two Axes. It was modeled after Aesop's famous fable, The Honest Woodcutter and Mercury. Anyone familiar with the story would immediately assume the correct answer was to choose the ordinary blade and reject the precious ones. But Joo-Heon wasn't about to fall for such an obvious trap. Looking directly into the serpent's eyes, he calmly answered, "Neither of those knives belongs to me." The giant serpent slowly closed its mouth. Then, after a brief silence, it opened its jaws once more. This time, only a single knife rested inside, the very same relic knife that Joo-Heon had thrown into the lake. The ancient voice echoed through the cavern once again. "Then, is this your blade?" Joo-Heon carefully studied the enormous white serpent before him. A sly smile slowly spread across his face, while his sharp eyes gleamed with unmistakable cunning. Instead of answering immediately, he shrugged casually. "I'm not entirely sure that's my knife," he said. "Mind if I take a closer look?" The ancient voice echoed through the cavern. Permission granted. The serpent slowly lowered its head, presenting the blade resting inside its mouth. Joo-Heon calmly reached forward. His fingers gently wrapped around the knife's hilt, and in the very next instant slash. Without a hint of hesitation, he swung the blade upward. The knife sliced straight through the serpent's mouth. A painful roar echoed throughout the underground grotto as the massive creature collapsed onto the stone floor, writhing in agony. The ancient voice cried out in disbelief. "Why? You had already passed the trial. Victory and your reward were only one step away." Joo-Heon merely smiled. The very first rule of relic hunting is never trust a relic. He looked down at the wounded serpent without the slightest bit of sympathy. Relics are nothing but pure evil. Who could guarantee that your so-called reward wouldn't become a curse the moment I accepted it? The serpent's forked tongue flickered weakly as it stared back at him. Its voice trembled. "How? Does a mere mortal know so much about us?" Joo-Heon's thoughts briefly drifted to the future he had once lived. There had been a man who successfully obtained the famous Twin Axes relic. At first, everyone celebrated him as a hero, but before long, the relic slowly twisted his mind. The once ordinary man transformed into a ruthless serial killer. By the time anyone realized what had happened, his list of victims had already become far too long to count. Gripping the knife tightly, Joo-Heon quietly spoke. "I know far more than you could ever imagine." He looked directly into the serpent's glowing yellow eyes. "It's honestly disappointing. A trial that's supposed to reward honesty ended up becoming one giant deception." Before the creature could react, Joo-Heon leaped high into the air. The knife flashed brilliantly. Stab. The blade plunged deep into the serpent's back. The monster let out another agonizing scream. Its massive body violently crashed against the cavern floor. Joo-Heon frowned coldly. "This is simply the natural consequence of your own actions." The serpent glared at him with widened yellow eyes. Its voice was filled with rage. "Do you truly believe that after this, I will willingly become your servant?" Joo-Heon didn't answer immediately. Instead, his mind wandered toward one of the most important truths about relics. Simply clearing a tomb wasn't enough. Passing the trial wasn't enough either. Even obtaining a relic didn't mean it would obey. Every relic had to form a connection with its owner. Some called it synchronization, others called it compatibility. But without that bond, a relic could never reveal its true power. Most people believed relics were divine treasures worthy of worship. Countless individuals bowed before them. They prayed to them. But what almost nobody understood was that relics hated humanity more than anything else. That hatred ran so deep it bordered on instinct. Even after becoming their owners, people slowly paid the price. Some coughed up blood, others developed incurable illnesses. Many gradually descended into madness. Some completely lost their sanity. Only a handful of incredibly rare relics possessed the ability to heal those curses. The few people lucky enough to obtain them were considered blessed by fate itself. That was also one of the reasons Joo-Heon could never forgive Tijuca and the people who had used relics to control the world. Fortunately, there wasn't only one way to make a relic obey. There were 3 different methods of forming a contract. The first, friendship, a healthy relationship built upon mutual trust and respect. It was by far the safest and most common method. The second, dominance, completely crushing a relic's will until it had no choice but to obey. Brutal, merciless, but undeniably effective. The third, compatibility, the rarest and strongest connection of all. This bond was formed when both the relic and its owner naturally shared the same ideals, desires, and purpose. It was similar to the relationship between a musician and their favorite instrument. When such harmony existed, the relic willingly offered every ounce of its power. Because friendship was easier, almost everyone chose the first method. Very few people dared to dominate a relic instead. Joo-Heon had no intention of wasting his time earning the serpent's trust. He knew exactly what friendship with a relic eventually became: a slow death. Without hesitation, he drove the knife even deeper into the serpent's back. Blood erupted across the cavern floor. The serpent shrieked in unbearable pain. Looking down coldly, Joo-Heon spoke in an emotionless voice. "I'm not interested in becoming your friend. I'm going to make you obey." He twisted the blade even further. "You have two choices. Serve me faithfully, or be destroyed forever. There are countless relics in this world. If you disappear, I'll simply replace you with another." The serpent trembled violently. Fear filled its enormous eyes. Its voice shook. "Why? Mortals are supposed to worship us, to desire us. Why are you treating me like this?" Before Joo-Heon answered, a brilliant golden light burst from the serpent's body. Its massive form dissolved into countless glowing particles before disappearing completely. The water beneath it exploded upward in shimmering waves. Floating gently in the air, a magnificent golden axe appeared before Joo-Heon. At the exact same moment, a familiar purple notification appeared. Basic skill awakened, primary archaeology. Another essential skill had finally been unlocked. Only one final requirement remained before completing his quest. Then another notification appeared. Dominance affinity +1, friendship affinity decreased. Joo-Heon blinked in confusion. Looking toward the black raven that silently observed everything from above, he asked, "So dominance goes up while friendship drops?" He waited for an answer. The raven remained completely silent. Eventually, Joo-Heon simply shrugged. "Whatever." Just then, voices echoed from deeper inside the cavern. "There, I found the core." Joo-Heon's expression immediately changed. The foreign agents had finally arrived. Hidden safely behind a massive rock, he watched as Abe and Linda Walker rushed into the grotto. Abe's eyes lit up. "It's exactly like the prophecy described." Joo-Heon frowned slightly. "They got here faster than I expected." Abe suddenly pulled a small crimson vial from his pocket. Linda looked at him in confusion. "What are you doing?" He didn't answer. Instead, he tossed the vial straight into the pond. Watching from the shadows, Joo-Heon couldn't help but grin. "Too bad. You're already too late." He carefully observed both agents. "Looks like we'll be seeing each other quite often from now on." His fingers slowly tightened around his knife. "Should I just kill them here?" Suddenly, another purple notification appeared. Relic status durability 54/100. Joo-Heon's eyes widened. So that's why. He stared at the damaged knife. After everything it had endured, the relic had already lost nearly half its durability. It wouldn't survive much longer if he kept using it recklessly. Glancing toward the silent raven again, Joo-Heon had a strange feeling. Was it trying to stop me from spilling more blood? Meanwhile, Abe looked around furiously. "This makes no sense. The prophecy clearly said the relic had to be thrown into the pond." Linda looked at him in surprise. "Wait, do you actually possess a seer's relic?" Abe shot her an irritated glare. "That's irrelevant." He clenched his fists. "Someone got here before us. They stole the relic." Linda quietly nodded. Looking down at the ground, she remembered the footprints she had noticed near the ruins earlier. "So that's it. The tomb has already been cleared." At that exact moment, a loud crash echoed somewhere deeper inside the cave. Joo-Heon smiled. The trap had finally activated. Looking at the glowing golden axe in his hand, he quietly muttered, "Time to leave." Before the tomb disappears, holding the relic high above his head, he calmly issued a command. "Seal the tomb." The golden axe radiated dazzling light. Instantly, the entire cave began shaking violently. Massive cracks spread across the ground beneath Abe and Linda's feet. Abe's face turned pale. "This isn't good. We have to get out." Linda frantically looked around. "Where's the exit?" Fortunately for Joo-Heon, he had already prepared an escape route long before entering. A nearby sewer hatch suddenly swung open from below. Climbing back to the surface, Joo-Heon dusted himself off with a satisfied smile. Always prepare your escape before entering a tomb. That's another rule every Tomb Raider should remember. Without attracting any attention, he quietly blended into the frightened crowd gathering outside. By the time he returned to the scene, the entire tomb had already vanished without a trace. As the commotion around the vanished tomb slowly died down, Kim turned around after hearing someone call his name. Slipping both hands into his pockets, Joo-Heon walked over with his usual relaxed expression. "What are you staring at?" he asked. Kim kept his eyes fixed on the empty space where the massive sand mound had stood only moments ago. "I still can't believe it," he muttered. The whole thing just disappeared. Joo-Heon casually waved his hand as if it were nothing extraordinary. "That's great news for me." He stretched lazily before patting his stomach. "Because right now, I'm starving." Meanwhile, far away, Abe sat on a park bench with an expression twisted in fury. His grip on his phone tightened until his knuckles turned white. Why wasn't I informed about this sooner? He shouted into the receiver. If this was how things were going to turn out, I should have known every single detail beforehand. On the other end of the call, a calm voice answered apologetically. The prophecy only appeared a few hours ago. Our analysts barely had enough time to decipher it. Abe's expression darkened. So read it again. His hands trembled with frustration. The voice hesitated before replying. We've already tried. We can't. Abe suddenly shot to his feet. What do you mean you can't? He roared. What are all of you even doing over there? And why isn't that child helping? The reply came after a brief silence. He's simply not in the mood today. Abe stared blankly at the dark phone screen for a moment before letting out an irritated growl. Understanding his anger, the caller tried to reassure him. We'll make sure this never happens again. We'll recover the lost opportunity. There was another pause before the voice spoke again. However, that Tomb Raider is a very unusual individual. Abe narrowed his eyes. What do you mean? Elsewhere, Joo-Heon sat comfortably inside his apartment with a can of beer in one hand while browsing countless websites on his computer. An untouched plate of food rested beside the keyboard. His newly acquired linguist skill allowed him to effortlessly read languages that ordinary people couldn't even recognize. Dozens of foreign websites filled his monitor. Yet despite searching everywhere, there was still almost no information about relics or tombs online. That wasn't surprising. The world hadn't officially discovered their existence yet. Those secrets would only become public much later. Joo-Heon shifted his search to someone else, Tae-Jun. His fingers rapidly danced across the keyboard as he searched every database he could access. Nothing, no information, no records, not even a trace of the organization behind him. So they're still completely hidden. Just then, Kim walked into the room and stared at the monitor filled with unfamiliar symbols. He scratched his head. Wait, are you seriously reading all of that? Or are you just pretending to understand random scribbles? Joo-Heon looked over his shoulder. Need something translated? Kim immediately waved both hands. No, I'm good. He stared at his neighbor with newfound admiration. I really live next door to a genius, he thought. Joo-Heon slowly spun around in his chair. Kim, have you ever heard of an organization called TKBM? Kim shoved his hands into his pockets before shaking his head. No, why? What is it? I need information about its chairman. Kim blinked. The chairman? What for? He scratched the back of his head awkwardly. Is this related to that investigation you've been working on? Joo-Heon turned back toward the computer. I already quit. Kim's eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. You quit? When did that happen? And why are you suddenly investigating the director of TKBM? Joo-Heon didn't answer. Instead, his fingers slowly rested on the keyboard as another idea formed in his mind. If I can't find information about Tae-Jun directly, then I'll approach him another way. Behind him, Kim continued asking one question after another. Unfortunately, every single one of them was met with complete silence. At that very moment, inside a rundown warehouse, two former gang members were cleaning the room while grumbling about their miserable situation. One of them sighed deeply. We really don't know anything about running a business, but we've still got families to feed. Nearby, Hyun angrily shoved a cigarette into his mouth. His face twisted with resentment. The next time I see Joo-Heon, I'm beating him senseless. This whole mess, it's all because of him. His blonde companion laughed. You know, we probably should jump him next time. Smirking confidently, the blonde man tapped his forehead. I told the boss from the beginning. I was always right. We've got to avenge him. Suddenly, a ringtone interrupted the conversation. The blonde man glanced at his phone, then immediately froze. His face turned pale. The caller ID displayed a name that sent chills down his spine. Joo-Heon. He instinctively grabbed the phone with both trembling hands. His partner frowned. Answer it. The blonde man swallowed hard before nervously bringing the phone to his ear. Hello? The moment the call connected, Joo-Heon's calm voice came through the speaker. You sure took your time picking up. The blonde man's face immediately turned red with anger. You're unbelievable. I'll find you and shut up. Joo-Heon's cold interruption instantly silenced him. Leaning back comfortably in his chair, Joo-Heon smiled. I've got a business proposal. Hyun slammed his hand onto the table. Business? We lost everything because of you. Our entire operation is finished. Joo-Heon's smile only grew wider. It doesn't have to stay that way. There might still be a future for you. Both men exchanged confused looks. What are you talking about? I want to hire you. I need loyal people working inside Midas. Joo-Heon's thoughts drifted toward a dazzling city lit by thousands of lights. Midas. the world's largest underground auction house, a place where priceless treasures, legendary relics, and unimaginable fortunes, gold, jewels, ancient artifacts, everything the black market desired, eventually found its way there. More importantly, Tae-jun regularly visited Midas whenever a high-grade relic appeared on the market. If Joo-Heon wanted to track him down, he first needed eyes and ears inside that organization. Holding the phone against his ear, Joo-Heon continued calmly, "I need information about a certain person." A mental image of a man dressed in an elegant black suit flashed through his mind. Find someone named Jake Kamen. He also goes by the initials J.K., a convenient alias designed to hide his true movements. Hyun clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles turned white. "You've lost your mind. Midas is in Las Vegas. It's crawling with dangerous criminals. People like us can't just walk in there." Joo-Heon answered without the slightest concern. "That's not my problem." He casually leaned back in his chair. "You can refuse if you want." The room fell silent. Then, a faint smirk appeared on Joo-Heon's face. "But I don't think you'll refuse after you hear how much I'm willing to pay." The two gang members immediately stopped breathing for a second. Their expressions slowly changed. No matter how dangerous the mission sounded, money had a way of making impossible jobs suddenly seem very tempting. On the other end of the phone, the gang members were still shouting at the top of their lungs. Joo-Heon casually pulled the phone away from his ear before the yelling became unbearable. The blond man, Hyun, screamed furiously. "We're not falling for your pathetic handouts. If we want money, we'll take it ourselves." His face was flushed with anger, but beads of sweat had already begun forming across his forehead. Joo-Heon simply smiled. "So, you're refusing?" His voice remained calm, almost amused. "In that case, I'll just have to convince you another way." Hyun's confident expression immediately stiffened. Joo-Heon's smile slowly widened. "I don't think you idiots realized something the last time we met. Things have changed." He leaned back comfortably in his chair before continuing in an almost cheerful tone. "I'll come find every single one of you and beat you up over and over again. I'll keep doing it until you're the ones begging to work for me." The threat was delivered so casually that it somehow sounded even more terrifying. Hyun's face instantly lost its color. "Wait." His voice trembled. "We can still but..." Before he could finish, click, Joo-Heon had already ended the call. Standing up, he grabbed a worn brown backpack and slung it over one shoulder. Sliding both hands into his pockets, he looked toward the city outside his window. "Interesting. If those idiots are gathering information on Tae-jun, I'll go claim another tomb." A confident smile appeared on his face. There was no reason to waste valuable time. Every relic he obtained before anyone else was another step toward changing the future. Night had completely fallen over the city. Bright headlights streamed along the crowded streets, while people wandered between convenience stores and late-night restaurants without realizing that history was quietly beginning to change around them. Inside a nearby convenience store, a television mounted above the counter broadcast the evening news. The anchor reported an unusual incident. Last night, a woman attempted to set herself on fire in the middle of the city. Joo-Heon, who had just stopped outside the store, immediately narrowed his eyes. A woman suddenly trying to burn herself. He recognized the pattern immediately. It has to be another relic. Although he couldn't be completely certain, his instincts, strengthened by memories from the future, told him he was probably right. Still, there was only one way to confirm it. Just as he was thinking, an irritated voice suddenly shouted from behind him. "Hey! What are you staring at? Move already! You're blocking everyone's view." Joo-Heon slowly turned around. Standing behind him was a dark-haired man with an annoyed expression. The moment Joo-Heon saw his face, his eyes narrowed. Interesting. He recognized him instantly. Abe, one of the foreign agents he had encountered inside the Tomb of the Two Axes. Joo-Heon studied him carefully. He's definitely not wandering around here by coincidence. If Abe is here, then another tomb is probably about to appear nearby. A small smile spread across his face. So that's how it is. The Japanese division is working alongside a Seer's relic. They already know where the next tomb will emerge. Abe frowned. "What did you just say?" Then, noticing Joo-Heon's appearance, he casually asked in Japanese, "Are you Japanese too? I've had a really exhausting day." Joo-Heon couldn't help smiling. "My linguist skill really is useful." He understood every single word perfectly. However, instead of answering honestly, he simply scratched his head. "I'm sorry. I didn't understand a single thing you just said." For a brief second, Abe completely froze. His eyes widened in disbelief. Joo-Heon almost laughed. "You should have seen your own face." Then, without warning, he replied. Flawless Japanese flowed effortlessly from his mouth. Abe nearly jumped in shock. "What? That's not funny." Joo-Heon chuckled. "You started being rude first. I was only returning the favor." Abe immediately shot back. because you were blocking the entrance. Ignoring him, Joo-Heon walked inside the convenience store toward the cashier. Abe stubbornly followed close behind. "Do you even know who I am?" he demanded proudly. Joo-Heon glanced sideways at him. At that exact moment, he sensed it. A powerful aura radiating from Abe's body. He's carrying a relic, and he isn't even trying to hide its presence. Joo-Heon's eyes sparkled mischievously. "Maybe I should just steal it." Abe reached out and grabbed Joo-Heon's shoulder. The instant Joo-Heon turned around, he casually popped open the can of soda he had just purchased. Fizz. The drink exploded everywhere. Sticky soda splashed directly across Abe's face and clothes. The Japanese agent immediately gritted his teeth. "You've got some nerve." Joo-Heon blinked innocently. "Oh? That was completely accidental." With an apologetic smile, he began brushing imaginary dust from Abe's clothes. "Someone must have shaken the can before I bought it." While pretending to clean him off, Joo-Heon's hand quietly slipped into Abe's pocket. His fingers brushed against something cold. A bracelet? Unfortunately, stealing it now would be far too obvious. Reluctantly, he withdrew his hand. Still smiling, he leaned closer. "I'd happily pay your laundry bill, but I spent my last bit of money buying that soda." He looked Abe up and down before adding with a grin. "Besides, maybe this is a good excuse to throw those ugly clothes away and buy something decent." Abe stared at him speechlessly. Before he could respond, Joo-Heon suddenly crouched down. "Oh, you dropped something." He picked up several documents from the floor before politely handing them back. "Be more careful." Abe quickly snatched them away. His expression became noticeably tense. "My archaeological documents, I can't let anyone see these." Just then, boom! A deafening explosion echoed across the city. Both men instinctively turned toward the sound. People throughout the street suddenly froze. What was that? Within seconds, panic spread like wildfire. Some pedestrians collapsed in fear. Others began screaming, "Run! Get away from here! Something's happening!" Joo-Heon's lips slowly curled upward. "Right on schedule. A new tomb has appeared." Without wasting another second, he immediately sprinted toward the source of the disturbance. Watching him disappear into the distance, Abe smiled. The seer was right again. He quickly pulled out his phone. "Everything is proceeding exactly according to plan." Then, the voice on the other end spoke again. Its tone suddenly became serious. "The individual who cleared the Tomb of the Two Axes will interfere with your mission once again. The child gave us another warning. Whatever happens, avoid alcoholic beverages." Abe froze. His pupils shrank. In an instant, a memory flashed through his mind. Joo-Heon, opening a drink, spilling it all over him only moments earlier. It was him, the man from the prophecy. Realizing the truth, Abe's face turned pale. Damn it! He looked around wildly, but Joo-Heon had already disappeared into the chaos. Joo-Heon suddenly stopped and looked around uneasily. With both hands buried in his pockets, he watched the people running through the area and muttered that something about this relic didn't feel right. In fact, he had a bad feeling that this particular relic was going to become a massive headache. Before he could investigate further, Abe raised his gun and shouted at him to freeze, or he would shoot. Joo-Heon stopped and turned toward the man. Abe immediately ordered him to open his backpack. His face was twisted with anger as he declared that he wouldn't lose to Joo-Heon again. But before the protagonist could respond, a strange noise caught his attention. He turned around. Suddenly, several purple system windows appeared in the air. A notification immediately popped up, warning him that an unknown aura was approaching. At the same time, bright yellow lines began spreading across the ground. Joo-Heon crossed his arms and gritted his teeth. Then a blinding flash of light engulfed the entire area. A massive yellow beam could be seen from far away, illuminating the city like an explosion. When the light finally faded, something horrifying had happened. Sharp blades were now sticking out from the walls and surrounding structures. People sat frozen on the floor, looking around in complete confusion, unable to understand what had just happened. Joo-Heon touched his forehead and closed his eyes, gritting his teeth as the people around him desperately asked what was going on. But Joo-Heon already knew. Everyone here was in danger. This relic wasn't simply dangerous. It was thirsty for blood. Joo-Heon stood up and stared at the countless blades scattered around him. Where had all these weapons come from? Then he remembered. This was the tomb of Muramasa. Joo-Heon immediately recalled everything he knew about Muramasa. Muramasa was a famous Japanese swordsmith who lived during the Muromachi period around the 16th century. He was known as the founder of the Muramasa school, and his blades were famous for their extraordinary quality and the mysterious legends surrounding them. One of those legends involved the infamous curse placed upon the Tokugawa family. According to the stories, Muramasa had opposed the policies of Tokugawa Ieyasu, the shogun who sought to unite Japan under his rule. Because of this hatred, Muramasa supposedly cursed the Tokugawa family through his swords. Joo-Heon imagined the countless battles and tragedies connected to those blades. It was widely believed that Muramasa's swords were connected to numerous deaths and accidents involving the Tokugawa dynasty. Because of this reputation, many of Muramasa's blades were eventually destroyed. Meanwhile, the people around Joo-Heon began picking up the swords scattered across the floor. Unfortunately, there was one more thing he knew. This relic possessed an unbelievable hatred toward humanity, and now it had noticed him. The system immediately confirmed it. Joo-Heon had attracted the relic's attention. He had also suffered a minor injury and required treatment. Joo-Heon closed one eye and looked away before rolling up the sleeve of his jacket. There were several wounds on his arm. He sighed. The tomb needed to be cleared as quickly as possible. But before he could move, Abe approached from behind. With an arrogant smirk, Abe reminded Joo-Heon that he had already ordered him not to move. He pressed the barrel of his gun against Joo-Heon's back and once again demanded that he open his backpack. Joo-Heon spread his arms wide. Abe was becoming seriously annoying. He wasn't going to listen to some guy trying to rob him. Joo-Heon slowly turned around. Abe smirked and told him to stop acting tough. After all, he was pointing a gun directly at him. Joo-Heon calmly raised both hands. Then he smiled. "Go ahead, shoot." Abe's expression immediately darkened. Joo-Heon repeated himself. "Come on, shoot." Abe finally lowered his weapon and shouted that Joo-Heon had no idea what he was dealing with. Maybe he would understand once Abe put a bullet through his leg. But then a flash of light suddenly appeared. Abe stopped speaking. His gun fell from his hand. He grabbed his smoking palm and screamed in pain. Joo-Heon simply smiled. With his hands returning to his pockets, he casually explained that tombs had rules. Modern firearms didn't work properly inside them. Otherwise, clearing these tombs would be far too easy. Abe stared at him in disbelief. How did Joo-Heon know all of this? At that moment, Abe became almost completely certain. Joo-Heon was the person who had stolen their relic the previous day. Joo-Heon didn't even bother denying it. Instead, he grabbed Abe by his clothes. With a smirk, he dragged the man along and told him to forget about the axes. Abe desperately asked him to let go. Joo-Heon ignored him. He had decided to get rid of Abe. The protagonist suddenly slammed him onto the ground. Abe let out a painful groan. But then something far worse happened. Monsters began surrounding him. Abe stared at them in horror. Where had these creatures even come from? Joo-Heon turned around with a grin. "Maybe we'll meet again." Then he walked away. The monsters immediately reached for Abe. One of them grabbed him by the throat as he struggled and angrily swore that he would kill Joo-Heon. Meanwhile, the other survivors stared at Abe in fear. Abe quickly tried to calm them down. He desperately asked if anyone could speak Japanese. One person stepped forward and admitted that he knew a little. Abe immediately began shouting for help. However, the people in the group warned the man that Abe could be dangerous. After all, he had a gun. Abe's face was now covered in sweat. He awkwardly smiled and tried to reassure them. He extended his hand and introduced himself as an important Japanese official and archaeologist who had come to deal with the situation. The people stared at him with disbelief. Abe promised that he could help them escape the tomb. Someone finally stepped forward. Meanwhile, Joo-Heon had already moved on. He pulled out the phone he had taken and examined it. He wanted to see what kind of useful item Abe had been carrying. Then he remembered how he had grabbed Abe by his clothes earlier. Luckily, he had been quick enough to search through Abe's pockets while doing so. Joo-Heon smiled. It was fortunate that humanity still knew so little about the tombs, because that lack of knowledge was working entirely in his favor. Joo-Heon reached into his belongings and pulled out a bracelet along with a cake. Raising an eyebrow, he examined the bracelet and immediately recognized its origin. It came from a famous Korean folktale about a brother and sister who eventually became the sun and the moon. Joo-Heon imagined the story playing out in his mind. Their mother had been attacked by a tiger who demanded rice cakes, and eventually, the beast turned its attention toward the children as well. Desperate to escape, the siblings grabbed onto a rope that mysteriously descended from the heavens, allowing them to flee from the tiger. Joo-Heon frowned as he looked at the purple system windows. Probably not a powerful relic. Still, it could prove useful. The system suddenly issued several notifications. A new title and skill had been unlocked, and the basic skill Sleight of Hand had also awakened. Purple system windows appeared around Joo-Heon as he realized that all 4 basic skills were now available to him. The system displayed information about the F-rank Sleight of Hand skill, followed by details about the basic abilities belonging to a plunderer. Joo-Heon suddenly froze. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. The system announced that he had unlocked every basic skill and successfully completed the mission. Joo-Heon smirked. It seemed Ran was turning this whole thing into some kind of game. Fine, keep playing while you can. Of course, Joo-Heon didn't particularly care as long as the system's games continued working in his favor. But before he could think about it any further, a terrifying scream echoed through the tomb. Joo-Heon's expression changed. Ahead of him was a bridge, and desperate cries for help were coming from somewhere below. He walked toward the edge and looked down. Sharp blades were protruding from the walls beneath the bridge. A large group of people was trapped below. Joo-Heon immediately recognized the situation. Another trap. A young girl stood among the crowd, gripping a knife tightly in her hand, as the terrified survivors desperately begged her to calm down. The girl clenched her teeth. Her eyes suddenly turned completely white. The others quickly realized something was wrong. They couldn't hear her anymore. Joo-Heon's expression darkened. The girl had been possessed, and if anyone touched her now, the same thing would happen to them. Against the red background, silhouettes of people could be seen fighting one another. Joo-Heon understood exactly what was happening. The more people that fell under the influence of the cursed swords, the harder it would become for anyone to escape. Eventually, everyone trapped inside this place would die. That was the true nature of this tomb. Standing beside the bridge, Joo-Heon looked down and wondered how these people had even ended up there. Then he asked if Abe was responsible. A man wearing a cap raised his hand toward his mouth and shouted back. Apparently, Abe had suddenly started singing some strange song. As he sang, several of the tomb's traps gradually disappeared. The survivors had helped Abe escape, only to receive a horrifying reward in return. Abe had apparently told them that every single person there had to die in order to keep the tomb's secrets hidden. Joo-Heon frowned. So there really were relics hidden here. Without hesitation, he began sliding down the rocky wall. The people below shouted warnings, telling him that the area was filled with blades. Joo-Heon calmly pulled out a dagger. Suddenly, fragments of blades flew into the air. The possessed girl immediately turned around after hearing the noise. Joo-Heon extended one hand toward her. The girl charged at him with the knife raised. Joo-Heon tightly grabbed the rope relic. "Let's see what you can do." He threw it forward and commanded it to stop the approaching enemy. The rope instantly wrapped itself around the girl's body. She was completely immobilized and crashed onto the ground. Joo-Heon smiled. That was easy. He reached for the dagger, preparing to retrieve it. But then the weapon spoke. An arrogant voice ordered him to kill every person around him. Joo-Heon's expression immediately darkened. He stared at the relic. How dare a mere relic tell me what to do? He checked the system's information and couldn't believe the weapon's arrogance. It was only a C-rank relic, yet it acted as if it were some legendary treasure. Joo-Heon immediately threw the dagger aside. What a waste of time. He wasn't interested in dealing with a useless relic. Instead, he asked where the main relic of the tomb was. The girl, still tied up, begged him to release her. The rope relic suddenly spoke as well, asking whether she wanted to have some fun. Joo-Heon narrowed his eyes. He already knew what would happen if he turned his back on these relics. The moment he stopped watching them, they would do whatever they wanted. Joo-Heon turned toward the survivors. "Follow me." The confused people stared at him. He warned them not to ask unnecessary questions. "I'm not a bad person." With that, Joo-Heon led them forward. Meanwhile, countless swords were sticking out of the floor. Then a loud laugh echoed through the tomb. Abe appeared with a sinister grin. He proudly announced that he had eliminated all the troublesome witnesses and had finally discovered the room where the Muramasa relic was hidden. Walking between the countless swords, Abe explained that he now only needed to find Muramasa itself. Then he would finally be able to get rid of that annoying protagonist. Abe leaned forward with a bloodthirsty grin. Joo-Heon had stolen his relics. Now he wanted to make him suffer. Suddenly a sword fell to the ground. Abe's expression changed. He quickly realized something was wrong. They were all fake. He still had no idea where the actual relic was hidden. Abe gritted his teeth and turned around. But then a crowd of angry people appeared behind him. They were shouting at him to get out. Someone grabbed Abe by his clothes. His eyes widened in shock. How had these people escaped? Before he could figure it out, Abe was thrown to the ground. The survivors immediately began kicking him. Joo-Heon casually walked between the swords, grinning at the pathetic sight. "Abe, you look ridiculous." With his face pressed against the floor, Abe gritted his teeth. He immediately realized who was responsible. Joo-Heon. Joo-Heon smirked. Who else could it be? He couldn't believe that Abe had entered the tomb first and still hadn't managed to find the main relic. Joo-Heon raised his hand. A glowing axe appeared in his grasp. He pointed it toward Abe. "Find the relic." Suddenly, one of the swords nearby began emitting a mysterious purple aura. Joo-Heon looked toward it. The answer had been right in front of Abe the entire time. The protagonist reached down and pulled the relic from the ground. Abe stared in shock. Was this really a broken fragment of the legendary Muramasa sword? Joo-Heon raised the weapon. A brilliant blue flash erupted from its blade. He immediately understood. Once activated, the relic would reveal its true form. But the sword itself complained that its current shell was in terrible condition. Joo-Heon tightened his grip around the hilt. Then the relic revealed the horrifying truth. If Joo-Heon wanted to unlock its true power, he would need to offer it 10 sacrifices. The Muramasa relic demanded human blood. It needed the lives of 10 people to restore its original power. Otherwise, it warned, the broken sword would remain buried inside this tomb forever, along with everyone else trapped inside. Joo-Heon now faced a terrifying choice. The most dangerous relic in the tomb had finally revealed itself, and it was hungry for blood. Abe could only stare with one eye half closed, completely unable to believe what was happening. The people surrounding him immediately began to panic. 10 sacrifices. The relic wanted 10 of them dead. Joo-Heon's expression darkened as he stared at the Muramasa sword. What exactly is this test? The answer was simple. The sword demanded that Joo-Heon kill the people around him. Joo-Heon frowned. Absolutely not. Instead of following the relic's demand, he grabbed the sword's hilt with both hands. The blade immediately began glowing red. Joo-Heon gritted his teeth and shouted angrily, "Why should I kill anyone when I can simply subjugate you?" The survivors looked up in shock. Joo-Heon tightened his grip. "If you refuse to obey me, I'll smash you into pieces." The sword would now undergo his test. Joo-Heon raised an eyebrow. "Muramasa, hurry up and obey." Red sparks exploded from the sword as Muramasa cursed furiously. How dare a mere human treat it like this? A powerful wind suddenly swept through the area, nearly knocking the survivors off their feet. In the middle of the swirling white mist, Joo-Heon stood firmly, gripping the sword. Blue flames began burning along the blade. While Joo-Heon dealt with Muramasa, he also prepared an escape route for the others. He grabbed hold of a rope and shouted at the survivors to climb. They hurried toward it, thanking Joo-Heon as they escaped the tomb. But just as Abe was about to follow them, Joo-Heon placed a hand on his shoulder. Abe froze. Joo-Heon smirked. "You're not going with them." He already knew what Abe was planning. Once they escaped, Abe would probably try to eliminate every witness. Abe nervously promised that he wouldn't do anything like that. He begged Joo-Heon to let him leave. Then, seeing that Joo-Heon wasn't convinced, Abe quickly offered him something far more valuable. He promised to convince his superiors to recruit Joo-Heon. According to Abe, Joo-Heon could earn around 10 billion yen by working with the Japanese team. Joo-Heon raised an eyebrow. Abe continued, explaining that the Japanese team possessed a powerful relic. If Joo-Heon could gain access to that power, his future would become much easier. Joo-Heon suddenly laughed. Abe's eyes widened. The protagonist crossed his arms. "You're hilarious." He couldn't understand Abe's logic. How exactly was Joo-Heon supposed to use a relic that could only be activated by its original owner? Abe quickly assured him that his team would do everything possible to help him. Joo-Heon finally allowed Abe to use the rope. But there was one condition. Abe would be the last person to climb out. Abe secretly smiled. It seemed Joo-Heon had fallen for the promise of 10 billion yen. As the two climbed the rope, Abe apologized for everything he had said earlier. Joo-Heon smirked. "Then let's talk about this deal." But before agreeing to anything, Joo-Heon wanted information. He needed to know more about the Japanese team that possessed the relic. Abe smiled confidently. "Don't worry about it." Then he revealed the name. The famous Japanese group, TKVM. Joo-Heon's eyes immediately widened. Then he smiled. Abe suddenly felt the rope slip from his hand. Before he could react, Joo-Heon kicked him directly in the chest. Abe went flying backward. He desperately stretched his arms out, completely confused about what had just happened. Joo-Heon looked down at him. Abe had been so desperate to survive that he had practically handed over all the important information himself. His mouth had betrayed him. Abe's face was now covered in sweat. He desperately begged Joo-Heon to wait. Was he really going to kill someone so cold-bloodedly? Joo-Heon simply stared at him. Later, the brightly illuminated signs of a building lit up the dark streets. Joo-Heon entered a men's restroom and walked toward the mirror. He rolled up his sleeves. He needed to examine his injuries. But from behind him came a familiar voice. Muramasa was screaming for freedom. The relic threatened to kill Joo-Heon if he didn't release it. Joo-Heon's expression immediately darkened. He opened his backpack. Who started all this noise? The screaming continued from inside. Muramasa couldn't believe the way Joo-Heon was treating it. Joo-Heon pulled out the katana. "So you're Muramasa?" The sword immediately demanded to be released. Joo-Heon had enough. He threw the sword directly into the toilet. "Shut up already." Muramasa cursed furiously. Joo-Heon ignored it. Pain shot through his body. Joo-Heon grabbed his arm. He rolled up his sleeve and examined the wounds covering his forearm. All of this damage was caused by Muramasa. More specifically, the consequences of forcing the relic into submission. Normally, obtaining a relic required passing the test it assigned. But Joo-Heon had ignored Muramasa's test completely. Instead, he had attempted to dominate the relic through sheer force. That method came with a serious price. The stronger the relic, the more violently it resisted, and the longer Joo-Heon continued forcing it into submission, the more damage his body would suffer. Then, suddenly a system window appeared. Joo-Heon froze. The notification announced that he had successfully exited the tomb, his basic Tomb Raider skills had been unlocked, and the reward for completing the quest had been received. Joo-Heon stared at the screen. What is this? Another status window appeared. This time, it presented him with two possible reward paths. The path of subjugation, or the path of friendship. Joo-Heon stared at the two options. So this was what Raven wanted him to choose. A method for controlling the relics? Why did Raven even care which path he chose? Was this some kind of test? Joo-Heon looked down at his injured hand. Despite the pain, he wasn't going to stop because of something as minor as an injured arm. He had already made his decision. The path of subjugation. Joo-Heon clenched his fist. Bright sparks surrounded his hand. The system immediately confirmed his choice. The reward for completing the quest had been activated. Joo-Heon frowned. But what exactly had he received? He looked around the restroom. Nothing seemed different. No new relic. No obvious reward. Nothing. Joo-Heon scratched his head. Was this really all he got? He couldn't help but complain. If you're going to imitate a game system, at least do it properly. After everything he had just endured, Joo-Heon expected something a little more impressive. But apparently, the system wasn't finished with him yet. Joo-Heon reached into his jeans pocket and pulled out a small silver pill. He opened his palm and stared at it. A relic. In the form of a pill? A status window appeared before him. Name, unknown rank, unknown type, consumable food. Joo-Heon frowned. So it's a consumable relic? He stared at the mysterious pill. Should he really eat something when he didn't even know what it was? Joo-Heon shrugged. Well, I've got nothing to lose. If the pill killed him, he could only blame his luck. Without wasting another second, he tossed it into his mouth. At the same time, Joo-Heon prepared to leave. He carefully pulled Muramasa out of the toilet, using a piece of paper to avoid touching it directly. Come on, we're going home. Joo-Heon needed to get out of this place. Then he glanced at the katana, although I probably shouldn't have dunked you in a toilet. The smell coming from the sword was absolutely horrible. Muramasa immediately threatened to kill him, but before Joo-Heon could respond, his eyes suddenly widened. The katana slipped from his hand. What the? The pill had started working. Joo-Heon narrowed one eye as sweat poured down his face. Then something incredible happened. The wounds covering his arm began disappearing. The injuries transformed into glowing energy before completely vanishing. Joo-Heon stared at his perfectly healed arm. A healing relic? He smiled and rubbed his wrist. What a ridiculous waste. Healing relics were incredibly rare and expensive. Yet somehow, he had just eaten one. But then, another system window appeared. The system announced that Joo-Heon had successfully endured the relic's effects and completely recovered. A new skill had also been activated. Joo-Heon's eyes widened. He had never seen an ability like this before. His irises began glowing with a brilliant purple light. A unique ability, created specifically for me? Joo-Heon couldn't help but wonder. Was this another gift from that mysterious raven? Meanwhile, the world was beginning to learn about what had happened. A news broadcast showed images of destroyed buildings. The report revealed that a massive earthquake had struck Seoul's administrative district during the night. But the earthquake wasn't the real story. At its epicenter, an unidentified object had suddenly appeared. Around 50 people were reportedly trapped inside. According to eyewitnesses, the mysterious structure was filled with deadly traps. The news anchor continued reporting that one of the survivors had claimed there was someone inside the mysterious object who intended to eliminate everyone trapped within it. A short-haired man with arched eyebrows appeared on the television. Kim-do was leading the broadcast. According to the report, the Korean government had already contacted Japan and was waiting for an explanation. Meanwhile, Russia and China were also demanding answers from the Japanese government. If Japan failed to explain what had happened, they would be forced to respond accordingly. The United States soon released an official statement as well. But before the broadcast could continue, someone turned off the television. Inside the central office of the Japanese research team, several high-ranking officials stood over a bowing man. They were furious. Do you have any idea what you've done? The information about the tombs was now being broadcast across the entire world. Worse, the incident had created a massive diplomatic crisis for Japan. The man's subordinate had caused an international scandal and died inside the tomb. And for someone in his position, failure was simply unacceptable. The man bowed deeply. "I sincerely apologize." Hiroyuki slowly raised his head. He forced a smile. This was an unforeseen circumstance. He explained that the Korean from the prophecy had appeared inside the tomb. But before he could continue, one of the officials angrily interrupted him. Wasn't Hiroyuki the one who had promised to handle everything? Even after learning that the Korean had appeared? Hiroyuki raised his hands defensively. Yes, they had discussed such a possibility. But there had been too many unexpected variables. Then his expression changed. There was another option. They could use the prophetic relic. With it, they could locate the Korean. The official frowned. Hadn't he already explained that the relic could only track someone after its owner made contact with them? Hiroyuki smiled. That's exactly why they could do it now. Behind him stood Abe. Their subordinate, who had been marked by the relic, had already made contact with Joo-Heon. The contact wasn't perfect, but it was enough. They could now track Joo-Heon's location. Hiroyuki gritted his teeth. The scientists who weren't the relic's original owners had been working tirelessly to find a way to activate it without suffering its effects. The TKVM group had invested enormous amounts of time and resources into this research. The official stared at him. Then he offered Hiroyuki one more chance. Hiroyuki smiled nervously. Thank you. He promised that they would do everything possible to eliminate the Korean. Elsewhere, under a clear blue sky, Joo-Heon lay comfortably on a bed inside a tall gray building. He examined his completely healed arm. His mind was focused on one thing: immunity. If this new ability could protect him from the harmful effects of relics, then it was an incredible power. Joo-Heon knew better than anyone how dangerous relic side effects could be. In his previous life, the problem had become so severe that healing relics eventually became some of the most valuable treasures in existence. He sat up while continuing to stare at his hand. If this ability could protect him from the effects of relics, then it was undoubtedly an incredibly rare power, perhaps something only he possessed. And that raised one important question. Was this all because of the Raven? Joo-Heon looked up. What exactly are you thinking? Why would the Raven give him an advantage over everyone else? What did it gain from doing so? The Raven was usually incredibly talkative. It constantly used the glowing system windows to communicate with him. So why was it silent now? Come on, answer me. Joo-Heon waited. Then a sound suddenly came from somewhere. Joo-Heon's eyebrows rose. He lowered his head. Then he smiled. You idiot. Before he could investigate further, his phone suddenly began ringing. Joo-Heon looked at the screen. It was Jinwoo. Why is he calling? He answered. How are my expensive minions doing? Immediately, an irritated voice came through the phone. Joo-Heon chuckled, but his expression quickly changed. Jinwoo was currently in Los Angeles. Apparently, he had checked the visitor list from the auction. There were 3 people with similar names. Joo-Heon immediately became interested. Jinwoo continued explaining what he had found. Joo-Heon swung his legs off the bed. Looks like I'll have to go there myself. Jinwoo's voice suddenly became louder. Wait, you're actually coming here? But before Joo-Heon could answer, a system notification appeared. Joo-Heon froze. An S-rank relic had been used on him, and his future had been predicted. Joo-Heon stared at the glowing window. His expression immediately darkened. This is really starting to piss me off. Jinwoo's voice came through the phone again. Joo-Heon? Are you still there? Joo-Heon smiled. He held the phone against his ear. Looks like I'll be staying a little longer than I planned. His eyes narrowed. There was somewhere else he needed to visit first. A man presented a thick book with a brown cover. According to him, it was an apocryphal work supposedly written by Prince Shotoku that contained a prophecy about Japan's future. Prince Shotoku had been a regent heavily involved in politics during his lifetime. However, rumors claimed that sometime during the Asuka period, he had secretly written a book capable of predicting the future. There was no concrete evidence that the book had ever existed. Yet, ancient scriptures frequently mentioned a mysterious prophetic relic connected to the legendary text. It was also considered one of the earliest relics to infiltrate human society. Joo-Heon imagined a young girl with long blonde hair tied into loose braids. Unlike ordinary relics, this one didn't create a tomb. Instead, it chose its owner. The prophetic scripture appeared at the girl's feet. Curious, the girl picked it up and examined the strange book. What kind of book is this? She wondered aloud, worried that leaving it on the ground would eventually damage it. Her name was Sasaki. She had been chosen by the prophetic relic. But when Sasaki continued walking, she left the book behind. That should have been the end of it. Except, the book followed her. Sasaki suddenly noticed it lying in front of her. She was confused. She tried everything. She burned it. She tore it apart. But no matter what she did, the book always appeared in front of her again. The more the relic followed her, the more frightened Sasaki became. Even when she found it sitting on a store counter, she could only stare at it helplessly. Eventually, the Japanese authorities discovered the existence of the prophetic relic. They recruited Sasaki into the Japanese research team. Her life changed overnight. In a photograph, Sasaki stood alongside her parents. Thanks to the relic's predictions, Japan was able to locate countless other relics. Her family was no longer struggling financially. It seemed like Sasaki's future had already been decided. She had the power to predict what was coming. But not everything goes according to plan. Sasaki sat at a table, pointing at a strange symbol in the prophetic book. What does this mean? The man beside her explained that the symbol was something only Sasaki could see. There was another problem. Sasaki had dropped out of school to dedicate herself to interpreting the relic's predictions. Because of that, she struggled to understand many complicated kanji. Without understanding the language, she couldn't fully utilize the prophetic relic's power. Eventually, another relic owner surpassed her abilities, and Sasaki died not long after. Her hand fell lifelessly to the ground. Meanwhile, at Incheon International Airport, Joo-Heon thought about the situation. Originally, he had planned to leave the owner of the prophetic relic alone. After all, she was destined to die soon anyway. But now things had changed. They had attempted to track him. That meant Joo-Heon could no longer ignore them. Worse, their connection to Kwon made him even more suspicious. He couldn't simply forget about that. Back in Japan, someone called out Sasaki's name from the doorway, but the girl was sitting in front of the television and didn't even react. A man entered the room. "Isn't it time to get to work?" Sasaki hugged a pillow tightly. She was more interested in the television. "Sasuke-san isn't just handsome. He's an amazing singer, too." She looked at the man sadly. "Do I really have to start right now? The best part is about to happen." The man stared at her. "You're watching this for the fourth time." Sasaki ignored him. She walked past him while still holding the pillow. "I still like it." The man awkwardly scratched the back of his head. "Right, sorry." A woman with her hair tied into a bun was already waiting for Sasaki. Sasaki finally sat down at the table. Once again, she had to decipher the complicated inscriptions inside the prophetic relic. The woman explained that if Sasaki encountered symbols she couldn't understand, she should carefully redraw them and show them to the research team. Sasaki nodded. Then she suddenly screamed. Both the man and woman immediately tensed. Sasaki jumped out of her chair and rushed toward the woman, hugging her tightly. The girl was terrified. "This book says I'm going to die." Everyone froze. This time, the writing was unmistakably clear. It said that Sasaki would be killed. The strange hieroglyphs began glowing brightly. Sasaki couldn't understand why this prediction was different. She clenched her fists. It has to be because of that Korean. After all, Abe had also died because of him. The others immediately approached her. The woman tried to calm Sasaki down. If the relic can predict the future, then surely there's more information. She urged Sasaki to concentrate and look again. The man leaned against the chair. "She's right. If Joo-Heon really intended to come to Japan and kill Sasaki, the prophetic relic should have provided more details." Meanwhile, the target's arrival time appeared on a screen. The plane was scheduled to land at Handa Airport. The Japanese forces were already on high alert. Their target was a Korean relic user, and he had finally arrived. Should we detain him at the airport? The answer was immediate. No, they would let him enter Japan. For now, their goal wasn't to capture Joo-Heon. They wanted to observe him. More importantly, they needed to use the prophetic relic to track his movements. Joo-Heon walked through the airport alongside the other passengers. The Japanese team continued monitoring him. "Are we having any problems tracking his movements?" The answer came quickly. No, everything was working perfectly. The prophetic relic could sense Joo-Heon's presence. Hiroyuki raised his hand. This was their chance. Use this opportunity. They had finally found a way to deal with their biggest problem. They would solve everything once and for all, and this time they would make the first move. Elsewhere, Joo-Heon sat alone at a table. A plate of sushi sat in front of him. He picked up a piece with his chopsticks and dipped it into soy sauce. After taking a bite, his eyes widened. As expected, this sushi had been prepared by a true master. It was delicious. Joo-Heon continued eating while checking his notebook, but he was starting to get impatient. How long are they planning to wait? He had been openly threatening Sasaki for some time now. Surely, they should have made their move already. Joo-Heon glanced at his notes. Then he smiled. There was something he was counting on. The prophetic relic should have already shown Sasaki what he had written, and if it had, there was no way the relic could simply ignore such a threat. Joo-Heon leaned back with a confident grin. The Japanese team thought they were secretly tracking him, but they didn't realize that Joo-Heon had already figured out exactly what they were doing. Now, all he had to do was wait for them to make their move. Joo-Heon deliberately moved as slowly as possible. He knew the Japanese team had been struggling to track him for quite some time, so there was no reason to make things easy for them. If they wanted to find him, he would simply give them more time. Joo-Heon glanced around. By now, the Japanese soldiers should have already arrived. Meanwhile, a man hiding around the corner raised his index finger to his lips. Shh. The people on the other side quietly apologized. Sasaki approached the man wearing a white cap. Are you ready? The girl nervously nodded. Is this really okay? The man reassured her. According to their plan, Sasaki only needed to meet Joo-Heon's gaze. That was all. Once she looked directly at him, the prophetic relic would be able to track his future. The man explained that Joo-Heon didn't even know what Sasaki looked like, so everything should go smoothly. Sasaki frowned. She had been told that her prophetic relic was the strongest weapon they had. That meant she had the advantage. At least, that's what everyone believed. Sasaki took a deep breath. She only needed to walk inside. Joo-Heon was sitting at a table when he heard his food had arrived. He turned around and smiled. Sasaki froze. The moment she saw him, her eyes widened. He's handsome. He was even cooler than Seokse. Sasaki nervously covered her face. And they're planning to kill someone this handsome? What a complete waste. She walked toward Joo-Heon and placed the sushi on his table. Joo-Heon looked at her. Thank you. Sasaki smiled. But then Joo-Heon's expression changed slightly. He had already figured it out. So this is the owner of the prophetic relic. Joo-Heon reached for the hilt of his sword. It was impressive that she had actually come to meet him herself. The Japanese team immediately noticed Joo-Heon's movement through the surveillance cameras. He drew his sword. The man holding the walkie-talkie immediately ordered everyone to prepare. Sasaki is in danger. A soldier in a white cap tightened his grip on his weapon. What is she doing in there? Why hasn't she come out yet? The man sitting beside him looked equally confused. What is that girl thinking? Suddenly the door opened. Everyone froze. Sasaki stepped outside. But she wasn't running. She wasn't injured. And Joo-Heon wasn't chasing her. Instead, Sasaki suddenly turned around. Are you a fan of Appa? Joo-Heon stared at her. What? Sasaki smiled awkwardly. Sorry, are you an actor? The Japanese soldiers watching through the cameras were completely confused. Why did she close the door? One of them pointed at the screen. Look, Joo-Heon and Sasaki were talking. The soldiers assumed Sasaki was trying to gather information from him. Coordinate with Captain Mori. Joo-Heon stared at Sasaki. What did you just say? Sasaki raised her hand. Wait, she pulled out her phone. You probably don't understand me. After typing something, she held the phone in front of Joo-Heon. The message was written in English. I want to be friends with you. Joo-Heon stared at the screen. His expression twisted. What is wrong with this girl? How could she possibly be acting this casually? She was standing in front of someone the Japanese government considered a dangerous enemy. And instead of being afraid, she wanted to be friends. Joo-Heon smiled. Actually, this could work in his favor. He took the phone from her hands and typed something. When he turned the screen back toward her, Sasaki's eyes sparkled. She smiled happily. Meanwhile, the soldiers outside were growing impatient. Did you hear anything? Before they could get an answer, crash. A table suddenly flew through the doorway. The soldiers froze. What the hell? A rope suddenly dropped from above. Then another. And another. The soldiers screamed as the relic ropes wrapped around them. Within seconds, the entire group was tied up. One of them struggled helplessly. What is happening? Joo-Heon stepped out with Sasaki. He smiled. I knew you would try something like this. That's why he had already installed a relic beforehand. The Japanese soldiers had walked directly into his trap. Joo-Heon and Sasaki continued down the hallway as the soldiers desperately shouted after them. Joo-Heon didn't even bother looking back. Don't worry about them. He had already made sure they wouldn't cause any more trouble. Then, Joo-Heon looked at Sasaki. Do you want to go on a date with me? Joo-Heon and Sasaki soon sat together at a table. Sasaki curiously watched him use his phone. Joo-Heon handed it back to her. Sasaki's eyes widened. Do you really want to go on a date with me? Then she immediately asked another question. Do you speak Japanese? Joo-Heon adjusted his jacket. A little. He glanced at her. Did you come here alone? Sasaki looked surprised. Joo-Heon continued. The Japanese army should be with you. He smirked. There's no way they'd let you go with me, willingly. They don't exactly like me. Joo-Heon placed his hand on Sasaki's head. Let's run away together. He turned around. And don't fall behind. Sasaki blushed. He doesn't seem that scary anymore. The Japanese forces quickly realized what had happened. They chased after Joo-Heon and Sasaki. Stop. But Joo-Heon didn't slow down. Sasaki looked at him nervously. Is this really the man who's supposed to kill me? Eventually, they reached a quieter area. Joo-Heon stopped. That's far enough. Sasaki stood behind him. She suddenly remembered something. Oh no. She had left her prophetic relic at home. That meant she couldn't read Joo-Heon's future. But she wasn't afraid. Joo-Heon suddenly raised his sword. The blade stopped directly against her neck. Sasaki remained surprisingly calm. Joo-Heon narrowed his eyes. Don't make unnecessary noise. He held out his hand. Give me your phone. Sasaki handed it over. Joo-Heon smirked. Good girl. Then crack. He stepped on the phone and shattered it. Sasaki's eyes widened. What are you doing? Joo-Heon immediately placed a finger against his lips. Quiet. He rested the sword against her shoulder. I'm just getting rid of anything they could use to track us. Joo-Heon turned Sasaki around. If the Japanese forces tried interfering now, things would become annoying. Then he leaned closer. His voice dropped to a whisper. I know who you are. Sasaki froze. Joo-Heon looked directly at her. You're the owner of the prophetic relic. Tears appeared in Sasaki's eyes. She finally understood. This man wasn't simply dangerous. He had known everything from the beginning. A glass of ice juice sat on the table as Joo-Heon and Sasaki sat opposite each other. The waiter smiled politely. Please enjoy your stay. The door slowly closed behind him. Sasaki stared at it with tears in her eyes. Joo-Heon calmly ordered a rope. Bind her hands. Sasaki's eyes widened. You liar. She couldn't believe it. He had actually lied to her about the date. Joo-Heon simply smirked while eating his ice cream. What are you talking about? Aren't we having a great time? Sasaki burst into tears. Are you going to kill me like the relic predicted? Joo-Heon casually held up his spoon. That was my plan from the beginning. He pointed toward his bag. I even have Muramasa with me. If you had come any closer back then, I would have chopped your head off. Joo-Heon looked at her. You're just lucky you're stupid enough to have brought us this far. He placed a notebook on the table. Take out your relic. Sasaki nervously stuttered. I left it at home. Joo-Heon rolled up her sleeve. A strange mark was visible on her skin. This appeared after you started using the relic? He grabbed her hand. Touch it. Sasaki looked confused. By doing that, you can summon the relic. Joo-Heon couldn't believe what he was hearing. You don't even know the basics? Sasaki touched the mark. A moment later, the prophetic relic appeared. Joo-Heon sat down. Now start writing. He continued eating his ice cream. Write down everything you saw. Sasaki nervously stared at him. And if you miss even one line, Joo-Heon smiled. I'll kill you. With her hands tied, Sasaki began writing. Time passed. Joo-Heon had already finished his ice cream. The glass in front of him was empty, and he was now scrolling through his phone out of boredom. Suddenly, he looked up. Why did you stop? Sasaki's hand trembled. My hand hurts. She nervously asked how much more she had to write. Joo-Heon glanced at his phone. As much as what's written there. Sasaki stared at the enormous amount of writing. I'll give you the prophetic relic. She desperately begged him. Just let me go. Joo-Heon immediately refused. Keep writing. He wasn't interested in taking the relic. If he wanted it, he could have taken it himself. But the prophetic relic was an S-rank relic, one of the highest-ranked relics in existence. And there was another problem. Joo-Heon glanced at his injured arm. Even after subduing Muramasa, his body had suffered considerable damage. Trying to subdue another powerful relic right now wouldn't just damage his arm, it could seriously hurt his entire body. And unfortunately, he didn't have any healing relics. Suddenly, bang, the Japanese army stormed inside. The woman working there immediately tried to stop them. You'll scare away the customers. Hiroyuki ignored her. We'll be finished quickly. Don't interfere. He gestured toward his soldiers. Check every exit. The soldiers immediately spread throughout the building. Search every room. Joo-Heon looked toward the doorway. They're already here. He turned toward Sasaki. How much have you written? Sasaki looked confused. I'm almost finished. Joo-Heon took the pages from her. This is enough. Sasaki's eyes lit up. Can I leave now? Joo-Heon paused. One more thing. He slowly raised Muramasa. Sasaki's face turned pale. Don't. She desperately begged him. I'll write more fortunes. I'll tell you anything. Isn't that enough? Joo-Heon stared at her. Do you really think you're important to me? He looked down at the notebook. You think you're using the prophetic relic. His expression became cold. But you've got it backward. Joo-Heon raised Muramasa above her. The relic has been using you this entire time. Sasaki's eyes filled with tears. Joo-Heon smirked. This is the only way you'll survive. Then slash. Muramasa plunged directly into the notebook. Brilliant blue sparks exploded from the pages. Sasaki screamed. Her eyes widened in horror. Whatever she saw inside the notebook left her completely speechless. Then, suddenly, she collapsed. At that exact moment, screams echoed throughout the caf. Joo-Heon looked around. Countless system notifications appeared before his eyes. One message immediately caught his attention. Because the user destroyed a high-ranking relic, the title, Great Hunter, has been awarded. Joo-Heon stared at the endless notifications. Why are there so many this time? The Japanese soldiers rushed into the room. We found him. Hiroyuki followed behind them. What happened here? His eyes immediately fell on the notebook. Then he noticed the missing relic. What happened to the prophetic relic? Joo-Heon glanced at Hiroyuki from the corner of his eye. He smirked. It's almost completely destroyed. Hiroyuki's expression twisted with rage. You. He pointed directly at Joo-Heon. Kill him. At that very moment, every soldier in the room raised their rifles and aimed them directly at Joo-Heon. The atmosphere instantly became suffocating. One wrong move, and dozens of bullets would tear straight through him. Yet instead of showing even the slightest hint of fear, Joo-Heon simply smiled a slow, mocking smile that only made everyone even more uneasy. With complete confidence, he looked at Hiroyuki and sarcastically remarked that it was quite the joke. If Hiroyuki was really so confident in his own strength, then he should go ahead and try pulling the trigger. Hiroyuki's face twisted with rage. The sheer audacity of this man made his teeth grind together. Then, without warning, Joo-Heon casually tossed something into the air. Catch, you can have this. Every soldier instinctively looked upward. A small package spun through the air before dropping toward Hiroyuki. The moment he caught it, everyone realized what it was. It was the Mochi Relic, the magical rice cake from the brother sun and sister moon relic. Joo-Heon smirked. Since the relic originally belonged to Abe's excavation team, he figured it was only fair to return it. But before anyone could relax, he added one final sentence. They say people would kill for a taste of this mochi. The instant those words left his mouth, Joo-Heon's body slowly dissolved into smoke before everyone's eyes. Within seconds, he had completely vanished. Hiroyuki's eyes widened. No, where did he go? He frantically looked around the room while tightly clutching the Mochi Relic. Then he frowned. What exactly is that bastard planning now? Before he could think any further, someone nearby suddenly sniffed the air. What's that smell? The next second, the expressions on every soldier changed. Their eyes became clouded. Their breathing grew heavier. Almost instantly, two soldiers lunged straight at Hiroyuki. Give it to me. That's mine. Hiroyuki staggered backward in disbelief. What are you idiots doing? He immediately grabbed his sidearm and pointed it at his own men. This mochi belongs to me. Learn to respect your commanding officer. But nobody was listening anymore. The relic's enchantment had completely taken over. Every soldier became obsessed with possessing the Mochi Relic. Within seconds, the entire room erupted into complete chaos as soldiers tackled each other, wrestled across the floor, and even pointed their weapons at one another, all over a single piece of enchanted mochi. Meanwhile, far away from the chaos, Joo-Heon calmly sat inside a plane preparing for takeoff. Looking out the window with a satisfied smile, he couldn't help but admire how useful that relic truly was. There wasn't a better escape relic anywhere in the world. The enchanted mochi didn't just captivate everyone who smelled it. It also instantly teleported its rightful owner to safety. Relaxing in his seat, he opened the notebook containing copies of the prophecy relic's predictions. Now that he finally had some peace and quiet, it was time to figure out what the prophecy had actually foretold about him. As he flipped through the pages, he remembered something important. The TKBM group had been supporting relic research in Japan for years. If Sasaki Yuka had ever crossed paths with Chairman Kwon Seok-won, then the prophecy relic should have recorded something about him as well. Carefully turning each page, Joo-Heon searched for any prediction connected to the mysterious chairman. Eventually, he found it. His eyes narrowed as he quietly read the prophecy. It stated that within 1 month, he would descend into an underground world overflowing with greed and desire. Beneath that prediction was another chilling sentence. There, the great calamity shall begin. Joo-Heon lowered the notebook slightly. An underground world overflowing with greed and lust. There was only one place that description could possibly refer to. Midas, the world's largest underground relic auction, hidden beneath Las Vegas. A place where priceless relics, stolen treasures, and unimaginable wealth exchanged hands every single day. Joo-Heon recalled the 2 men he had sent to infiltrate Midas. They were gathering information on Chairman Kwon, because the initials JK matched 3 different individuals connected to the auction. One of them had to be Kwon Seok-won. It seemed the prophecy relic had been pointing directly toward him all along. Joo-Heon leaned back in his seat and continued reading. The final sentence still bothered him. The great calamity. Closing his eyes, memories from his previous life resurfaced. He remembered countless crimson beams piercing the heavens, ancient tombs appearing across every continent, relics awakening everywhere, the entire world collapsing into chaos. That was the great calamity. It was the event that revealed the existence of relics to the entire world. After that day, tomb raiding became one of the most dangerous and profitable occupations on Earth. But something didn't add up. According to Joo-Heon's memories, the great calamity wasn't supposed to happen this early. As the aircraft slowly began preparing for landing, he read the prophecy once more. One particular line immediately caught his attention. The deity who understands your greed shall ask for your cooperation. Joo-Heon's eyes widened. He immediately understood what it meant. A god-class relic was about to appear at the Midas Auction. He couldn't help but grin. So that's how Quan Seok-wan became so powerful in my previous life. If Quan had obtained that divine relic, everything suddenly made perfect sense. Joo-Heon's smile slowly turned into a wicked grin. If that's really the relic he obtained, then this time I'm taking it first. Meanwhile, inside the headquarters of Japan's Relic Research Division, the atmosphere couldn't have been more different. A military officer stood before several high-ranking officials. Sasaki Yuka has regained consciousness, but she's still extremely weak. He paused before continuing. It also appears that the prophecy relic has been completely destroyed. The conference room instantly fell silent. One executive frowned. So you're telling me Captain Mori and the members of his unit ended up shooting one another with their own service weapons, and they're all seriously injured? The soldier nodded. Yes, sir, they're all currently receiving treatment. Suddenly, one of the executives slammed both hands onto the table before shooting to his feet. Does any of that even matter anymore? Do you people actually think this is some kind of joke? Another executive quickly tried calming him down. We need to stay rational. But the chairman refused to calm down. How am I supposed to stay calm? Our greatest strategic relic has been destroyed. Our military has become an international laughingstock, and one man is responsible for all of it. A young woman quietly stepped into the hallway while speaking on her phone. She calmly reported that the prophecy relic had been destroyed. Japan's self-defense forces had also suffered tremendous losses during the incident. The man on the other end immediately exploded with anger. You're telling me one person did all of this? The woman continued walking through the corridor. Based on everything we've confirmed, yes, it was all done by a single individual. Hearing that answer, the man couldn't hide his disbelief. Who the hell is this lunatic? The camera shifted, revealing the enormous TKBM Corporation logo displayed prominently on the wall. The woman respectfully asked what their next course of action would be. Should we seek revenge for everything we've lost? There was a brief silence. Then the man calmly answered, No, we won't seek revenge. The woman stopped walking. She couldn't understand his reasoning. But we've lost years of research. Our investment in relic studies has practically been wiped out. The man stood beside a massive office window overlooking the city skyline. Without raising his voice, he calmly replied, That's one way of looking at it. But there's another. If someone possesses enough power to destroy the prophecy relic without hesitation, then that person is far more valuable as an ally than as an enemy. The woman frowned. She wasn't convinced. He destroyed one of the world's most important relics without showing even the slightest hesitation. What happens if he destroys one of our company's relics next? What if he destroys the president's relic? A slow smile spread across the man's face. Rather than looking worried, he almost looked excited. Then he quietly laughed. That won't happen, as long as we pay him well. He adjusted his glasses before continuing. Money. There is nothing in this world that money cannot buy. After a brief pause, he gave his final order. For now, keep watching Joo-Heon. I want to know everything he does. The woman nodded silently. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada was alive with dazzling lights, despite the late hour. Beneath the glittering skyline, inside one of the city's most luxurious hotels, seated beside the enormous window was Joo-Heon, calmly sipping a glass of juice. He stared out at the sea of neon lights before placing his glass back onto the table with a faint sigh. They're late. His voice carried obvious annoyance. I told those idiots exactly when to get here. Just then, loud voices echoed from the restaurant entrance. Joo-Heon glanced sideways. There stood Hyun, accompanied by his partner, arguing with one of the hotel's security guards. The guard blocked their path with a professional smile while repeatedly explaining the rules. Hyun immediately spotted Joo-Heon sitting across the restaurant. There he is. We're with that guy over there. We've got business to discuss. The guard, however, remained unmoved. I'm sorry, gentlemen. This restaurant is reserved exclusively for registered guests attending the Midas Auction. If you are not official participants, I'm afraid I have to ask you to leave. Hearing that only irritated Hyun even more. Will you shut up already? We're telling you we're here for him. Joo-Heon rested his cheek against one hand, quietly watching the argument unfold with an exhausted expression. The guard sighed. If you continue disturbing our guests, we'll have no choice but to escort you out by force. Hyun completely lost his temper. What are you even saying? Speak Korean. The entire restaurant turned to stare. Joo-Heon finally couldn't hold back anymore. We're in America, and you're demanding they speak Korean? Hyun froze. Only then did he realize exactly how ridiculous he sounded. Without another word, Joo-Heon casually raised his hand toward the guard. They're with me. They're my guests. I'll take responsibility for them. The guard's expression instantly changed. My deepest apologies, sir. I sincerely apologize for the misunderstanding. The three men stared blankly. One sentence from Joo-Heon had completely changed the guard's attitude. As soon as he disappeared, Hyun turned toward Joo-Heon with his jaw hanging open. You can actually speak English? A sarcastic grin appeared on Joo-Heon's face. That's not important. Sit down. Tell me what you found. A short while later, Hyun slid a small notebook across the table. We investigated everyone with the initials SK who will be attending this month's auction. Joo-Heon quietly flipped through every page. His eyes scanned the information one name at a time. Then, a satisfied smile slowly spread across his face. Perfect. He had found exactly what he had been looking for. Looking at Hyun and the others, he silently admitted they had proven more useful than he'd expected. Unable to contain his curiosity, Hyun pointed across the table. So, did you find your guy? Without looking up from the notebook, Joo-Heon calmly answered. I did. He tossed the notebook onto the table. So this is the fake identity that Kwon Tae-jun used in my previous life. His suspicion had been confirmed. Closing the notebook, Joo-Heon picked up a luxurious green catalog lying beside it. This catalog listed every relic scheduled to appear at tonight's Midas auction. Quietly flipping through its pages, he thought to himself, if Tae-jun personally came here, then there has to be something extraordinary being sold tonight. I already confirmed that much beforehand. Slowly turning each page, he carefully examined every relic listed inside. There were priceless historical artifacts, ancient weapons, lost treasures, legendary relics from every civilization imaginable. Joo-Heon studied every single item. If the prophecy was correct, then somewhere in this catalog should be a god-class relic. Yet, no matter how many pages he turned, there wasn't a single relic worthy of that description. His brows slowly furrowed. That's strange. He quietly muttered several famous relic names to himself. The Code of Hammurabi, Shakespeare's pen, neither of them appeared. Hyun leaned over in confusion. What exactly are you looking for? Joo-Heon didn't answer. Instead, he continued flipping through the catalog. There are still a few things I'd like to confirm. Suddenly, Hyun shot to his feet and slammed both hands onto the table. Wait a second. You're not seriously planning to participate in the auction, are you? Without even lifting his eyes from the catalog, Joo-Heon calmly replied, I am. The answer nearly gave Hyun a heart attack. This is the Midas Auction. The opening bids alone are ridiculous. We only came here to make connections with wealthy collectors. We never planned on actually buying anything. Guests throughout the restaurant began glancing over after hearing Hyun shouting. Completely unfazed, Joo-Heon slowly closed the catalog. Then he looked directly at Hyun. A playful smile appeared on his face. You actually think I don't have enough money? Without waiting for a reply, he stood up from his chair and started walking toward the exit. Hyun and the others hurried after him. Hands tucked casually into his pockets, Joo-Heon stopped beside the hotel doors before looking back over his shoulder. Hyun, you seem to have forgotten something. This is Las Vegas, the city built on gambling. A confident grin spread across his face. Sometimes all it takes is a little money to make a fortune. Hyun's face instantly turned pale. Don't tell me. You're planning to earn auction money by gambling? He broke into a cold sweat. This guy's completely insane. A few hours later, Yoon could only stand there speechless. The digital counter on the slot machine continued climbing higher and higher and higher. The numbers had become absolutely absurd. Can slot machines even display numbers this high? Around them, casino patrons had gathered into a massive crowd. Every single person stared at the machine in complete disbelief. Meanwhile, Joo-Heon calmly sat in front of the slot machine, as though nothing unusual was happening. A faint, confident smile rested on his face. To everyone else, it looked like impossible luck. But Joo-Heon knew exactly what he was doing. The jackpot counter continued spinning until it finally stopped on an astronomical amount. Hyun wiped the sweat from his forehead. I've never seen someone win this much money from slot machines. If you don't cash out now, you could lose everything in one spin. Joo-Heon simply smiled. A few moments later, the machine printed a payout receipt. He casually pulled it free before waving it in front of Hyun's face. Come on, we're going to the cashier. Time to exchange this for real money. Hyun grabbed the receipt. The moment he saw the amount printed on it, he screamed, That's insane. You've completely overdone it. What if someone decides to kill us for this much money? Just as they started walking away, a voice called out behind them. Sir, Joo-Heon stopped and turned around. A casino security officer approached politely. If you don't mind, we'd like to carry out a routine inspection. He smiled awkwardly before continuing. You see, this is the first time in our casino's history that someone has won this many consecutive jackpots. Joo-Heon merely shrugged. No problem. He calmly stretched both arms out. Go ahead, it's just a waste of time. I don't have anything on me. The security officer nodded and carefully searched him from head to toe. After a thorough inspection, the man looked slightly embarrassed. You're right, it seems perfectly normal. Then, his eyes stopped on something. There was a small golden keychain attached to one of Joo-Heon's fingers. The guard pointed directly at it. "Excuse me, what exactly is that?" Joo-Heon casually held up the tiny golden folding knife and smiled. "It's nothing special," he said. "Just a cheap little trinket I bought, because I liked the color." The casino security officer took the knife from his hand and examined it carefully from every angle. After inspecting it for a moment, he nodded. "It really does look ordinary. There doesn't seem to be anything suspicious about it." Satisfied, the guard handed the knife back. A faint, knowing smile appeared on Joo-Heon's face. Of course it looks ordinary. That's exactly the point. Deep down, he couldn't help but chuckle. The keychain wasn't an ordinary accessory at all. It was actually the golden axe relic, perfectly disguised. Just then, the relic rumbled inside his hand. "Seriously? How much longer do I have to stay in this boring little form?" The golden axe sounded thoroughly annoyed. Joo-Heon ignored the complaint. Changing a relic's appearance was one of the most valuable abilities a relic owner could possess. A powerful relic that looked like nothing more than an everyday object could fool almost anyone. And this particular relic wasn't useful only because it could disguise itself. The golden axe possessed another incredible ability. It could instinctively sense wealth, value, and fortune. Joo-Heon remembered sitting in front of the slot machines earlier, with the disguised axe quietly resting in his hand. That was exactly how he'd known which machine was hiding the next jackpot. The relic naturally gravitated toward the greatest concentration of value. Not only could it identify winning slot machines, it could even guide him toward whichever casino held the greatest opportunity to make money. For someone like Joo-Heon, it was an unbelievably useful relic. A few minutes later, after leaving the inspection area, Yoon could barely contain his curiosity. "You actually got away with it? Seriously, what's your secret?" Joo-Heon didn't even bother answering. "Come on, time to move to another casino." Joo-Heon walked straight to the cashier's counter and placed the massive payout receipt on the desk. Wearing a relaxed smile, he calmly said, "I'd like to cash out." The entire amount. The cashier accepted the receipt. The moment she saw the total printed on it, her eyes widened. "All of it?" Her hands visibly trembled. "I'm terribly sorry, sir. For an amount this large, I'll have to escort you to our VIP room first." "I'll pass," Joo-Heon answered without hesitation. "Just hurry up and bring me the money." Not long afterwards, the group had moved into a private lounge while the payout was being prepared. Several enormous bags overflowing with cash now rested on the table. Yoon stared at them in complete disbelief. "I've never seen this much money in my life." His companions were just as stunned. Joo-Heon quietly took another sip of his beer before looking at them. "You seem to have misunderstood something." Everyone froze. "This money isn't yours." Silence filled the room. The three men awkwardly forced smiles onto their faces. "Oh, of course, we knew that," although judging by their expressions, they clearly hadn't. Yoon picked up a small bundle of banknotes and stared at it in amazement. Then he looked back at Joo-Heon. "Do you really have to participate in the auction? Wouldn't it be smarter to take all this money and go back to Korea?" Joo-Heon calmly shook his head. No, for him, gambling had never been the objective. The money itself wasn't his goal either. The only reason he'd come to Las Vegas was to obtain the relics hidden inside the Midas Auction. And, if he wanted to stand on equal footing with Kwon Tae-jun in the future, he would need far more money than this. Setting his empty beer glass back onto the table, Joo-Heon stood up. "Finish eating. We're heading out. The second round starts now." Hyun nearly choked. "You're gambling again?" Cold sweat rolled down his forehead. A short while later, the group arrived at another famous casino. Goodbye World Casino. Inside Joo-Heon's pocket, the disguised golden axe suddenly laughed. "Heh, I can smell money everywhere." Then it complained again. "So when are you finally changing me back to my original form?" Joo-Heon simply held up the tiny golden folding knife. "Enough talking. Just find me the next jackpot." The golden axe instantly became enthusiastic. "Got it. Leave it to me. Let's see where all the money's hiding." Just then, several system notifications suddenly appeared in front of Joo-Heon. He blinked. Another message immediately followed. Joo-Heon frowned. He understood why. Places overflowing with greed, desire, suffering, and obsession were paradise for relics. Casinos were practically heaven to them. "I hate giving these damned relics what they want," he muttered quietly. Tightening his grip around the disguised golden axe, he planned to earn enough money as quickly as possible before leaving. But before he could take another step, a loud scream echoed across the casino. Joo-Heon instantly turned toward the sound. A young man wearing a purple t-shirt was desperately struggling to hold onto his backpack. It's inside. It's going crazy." Without hesitation, Joo-Heon snatched the backpack from him and unzipped it. The moment he looked inside, his expression changed completely. Lying within the bag was the silver axe relic. The relic trembled violently while shouting over and over, "It's coming. It's almost here. It's coming very soon." Joo-Heon immediately remembered the pair of relics. The golden axe possessed the ability to locate wealth, fortune, and valuable treasures. The silver axe, however, served an entirely different purpose. It could detect and mark anyone who posed a threat to its master. Joo-Heon's eyes narrowed. The warmth disappeared from his expression, replaced by cold suspicion. Staring directly at the frantic silver axe, he silently wondered, "What exactly are you reacting to?" Suddenly, loud shouting erupted from the center of the casino. Two men had grabbed each other by the collars, and one of them screamed that the other was nothing but a con artist. What started as a simple argument quickly spiraled into complete chaos. People began shoving each other in panic. Poker chips scattered across the floor. Slot machines toppled over one after another. Someone's wallet was snatched. Several guests started fighting over dropped money, while others screamed and rushed for the exits. Yoon stood frozen. What the hell is happening? Before he could process the situation, a man armed with a knife quietly crept up behind him. At the same moment, another attacker charged straight at Joo-Heon, shouting, "Hand over all your money." Joo-Heon reacted instantly. Before anyone even realized what had happened, the attacker was already lying on the floor, screaming in pain. Joo-Heon looked down at him calmly. Judging from the man's clothes, he looked like nothing more than an ordinary casino employee. "So you decided to rob a random customer? Do you even realize what you're doing?" His expression slowly became more serious. Something wasn't right. There shouldn't have been a tomb nearby. No gate was supposed to appear here. Then why was everyone suddenly losing their minds? Just then, a terrifying presence sent chills racing down his spine. It was so overwhelming that every instinct in his body screamed at him. Joo-Heon immediately spun around. Walking calmly through the crowd was a beautiful young woman with long platinum blonde hair. Unlike everyone else, who was panicking and fighting, she remained perfectly composed. She wore an elegant evening dress that made her stand out effortlessly among the terrified crowd. The moment Joo-Heon saw her, his eyes widened. Cold sweat immediately ran down his face. Meanwhile, Hyun and the others reacted completely differently. "She's gorgeous. Who is she?" Without answering, Joo-Heon suddenly shouted, "Pack everything. We're leaving." Hyun blinked. "What?" Joo-Heon ignored him. "Of all the people I could have met, why her?" Now everything made sense. The chaos, the people acting irrationally, the unbelievable bad luck spreading throughout the casino. There was only one person capable of causing something like this. His eyes remained fixed on the approaching woman, Irene Holten, the youngest daughter of the powerful Hilton banking family. "Move." Joo-Heon barked. His group hurriedly grabbed their belongings and rushed toward the exit. Irina only caught a brief glimpse of them disappearing through the crowd. As Joo-Heon walked, memories from his previous life surfaced. After the Great Catastrophe, countless relic users had appeared across the world, but among them, the strongest possessed divine-class relics. People capable of completely subduing those relics stood above everyone else. Eventually, the world began giving them titles worthy of their overwhelming power. They became legends. Among those legendary relic users was Irene Holten. She wielded one of the most horrifying relics in existence. Because of that relic, people eventually gave her a terrifying title, the Goddess of Misfortune. Anyone who remained close to her gradually lost their luck. Some lost their fortunes overnight. Others watched their businesses collapse. Entire corporations went bankrupt simply because they crossed paths with her. In Joo-Heon's previous life, Irina had even become one of the catalysts behind a global financial crisis. That alone made her someone to avoid at all costs. Joo-Heon quickened his pace toward the exit. He wanted nothing to do with her. "Excuse me." Irina suddenly called out. Joo-Heon stiffened. Turning slightly, he saw her running directly toward him. Without hesitation, he pretended not to hear and immediately sped up. "Just ignore her." He reached for the exit door. The instant his fingers touched the handle crack, a violent electric shock shot through his entire body. Several system windows instantly appeared before his eyes. Another message appeared immediately afterwards. Then another. Cold sweat poured down Joo-Heon's face. "Seriously?" Before he could react, Irina caught up to him. She rushed past the stunned Hyun and grabbed both of Joo-Heon's hands with a bright smile. "Please. Just hear me out." Joo-Heon sighed internally. "Great, now I can't escape." Irina smiled innocently. "I've been looking everywhere for you." The moment she held on to him, a dark purple aura spread across his body. More system notifications appeared. Joo-Heon's expression darkened. Without hesitation, he slapped her hands away. "Please stay away from me." Irina froze. Immediately realizing she'd gone too far, she bowed apologetically. "I'm so sorry. I just got a little too excited." Meanwhile, Hyun looked completely confused. "What on earth is wrong with you? You look like you'd seen a ghost." Just then, the young man carrying the silver axe suddenly gasped. I know who she is. Everyone turned toward him. That's Irene Holten, the daughter of the Holten family. At first, nobody believed him. Then another man suddenly remembered. Wait, he's right. I've seen her picture online before. Irene shyly hugged her handbag before looking back at Joo-Heon. You're the person everyone has been talking about. The man who won all that money in the casino, aren't you? Joo-Heon frowned. I've been looking all over for you. Irene continued with an innocent smile. If it isn't too much trouble, would you tell me how you managed to win so much? Joo-Heon simply looked away. Why would someone from one of the richest families in the world care about gambling? Without another word, he answered, You've mistaken me for someone else. Then he walked away. Irene stood there speechless. Hyun immediately caught up with Joo-Heon and wrapped an arm around his shoulders. Are you insane? Do you even know who she is? That's Irene Holten. She came all the way here looking for you. And you just ignored her? Joo-Heon's expression only became darker. Hyun kept talking. You're throwing away the opportunity of a lifetime. Are you even listening? Just then, Hyun suddenly waved toward Irene. Miss Holten, I'm sorry about him. Joo-Heon immediately turned around. You idiot. Only, the scene before him had completely changed. All three of his companions were lying flat on the ground, clutching their stomachs in agony. A crimson aura surrounded their bodies. They groaned in pain. My stomach, it hurts. Joo-Heon pinched the bridge of his nose. Idiots. He walked over and dragged them to their feet. I told you to stay away from her. A little later, Joo-Heon and Hyun sat together in a quiet park outside the casino. Joo-Heon looked at him seriously. Listen carefully. No matter what happens, stay away from Irene Holten. At all costs. Hyun blinked. Why? Instead of answering, Joo-Heon stood up. When those idiots recover, find somewhere safe. Guard the money. Hyun frowned. Where are you going? To the auction. As soon as I'm finished, I'll call you. Bring the money when I do. As he walked away, Joo-Heon couldn't help feeling irritated. Originally, he had planned to earn much more money before the auction began. But now, that was no longer an option. With Irene's cursed aura affecting his luck, continuing to gamble would only end in disaster. There was no choice. He would have to enter the auction with the money he already had. A short while later, Joo-Heon stepped inside the luxurious auction hall. The enormous venue was already packed with wealthy collectors, businessmen, and influential figures from around the world. Blending naturally into the crowd, he silently made his way toward the entrance. Irene shouldn't have any reason to follow me here. Just then you're blocking the entrance. A cold voice interrupted his thoughts. Joo-Heon turned around. Standing before him was a young man wearing glasses. His expression was filled with arrogance. This entrance is reserved for VIP guests. Ordinary people use the other entrance, so move. Joo-Heon stared at him for a moment. Then his eyes narrowed. Yoon Shi-Hoo, Kwon Tae-jun's trusted right-hand man. He looked much younger than Joo-Heon remembered from his previous life. If Shi-Woo was here, then there was only one conclusion. He was here too. A few seconds later, Kwon Tae-jun himself walked toward the entrance. Shi-Woo immediately smiled respectfully and stepped aside. Chairman, this way. Joo-Heon's fists unconsciously tightened. At last, he had finally come face to face with the man who had ruined his previous life. Memories flooded back instantly. He remembered lying in a pool of his own blood. He remembered Tae-jun looking down at him with complete indifference. Even now, Joo-Heon could still picture that monstrous creature opening its enormous jaws. Back then, even as death approached, he had sworn to himself that if he ever became a ghost, he would drag Kwon Tae-jun into hell with him. But this time, things were different. In this life, the hunt had already begun. Completely unaware of the hatred burning only a few meters away, Kwon Tae-jun glanced briefly at Joo-Heon before calmly walking deeper into the auction hall with Shi-Ho beside him. He didn't recognize him. A confident smile spread across Joo-Heon's face. This auction was different from the last one. In his previous life, Kwon Tae-jun had walked away with countless priceless relics, but this time, Joo-Heon intended to claim every relic worth having. Just as he was about to move farther into the auction hall, loud shouting suddenly erupted behind him. People began pulling out their phones one after another. What the hell? My stocks just crashed. Another man stared at his screen in disbelief. I've lost everything. What is going on? Someone else repeatedly pressed the power button on his mobile. My phone isn't working. Joo-Heon slowly scanned the crowd. Something felt wrong. Then his eyes landed on a familiar figure. Irene Holten. She was standing only a short distance away. Joo-Heon's eyes widened. She actually followed me here? As if sensing his gaze, Irene looked directly at him. Out of the hundreds of people surrounding them, she had somehow found him immediately. Irene called out as she hurried toward him. Please listen to me. Joo-Heon sighed in frustration and immediately turned away. But before he could get far, bang. He walked face first into a glass door. Clutching his nose, he grimaced in pain. Irina quickly rushed over. Are you all right? Joo-Heon slowly looked up at her with an irritated expression. Do I look all right? Then, he pointed directly at her. Stop following me. Everything that's happening is because of you. Irina lowered her head before giving a bitter smile. You're right, and that's exactly the problem. Joo-Heon frowned. What kind of answer was that? Irina stepped closer before speaking quietly. I don't know if you'll believe me, but I think I bring bad luck to everyone around me. Joo-Heon remained silent. I wish I could be lucky like you. If I were, maybe the people around me could finally be happy. For a brief moment, Joo-Heon remembered the woman he knew from his previous life. The goddess of misfortune, the terrifying relic user whose existence had ruined countless lives. Entire businesses had collapsed because of her. Yet, the timid young woman standing before him looked nothing like that terrifying figure. Irina gently held both of his hands. Joo-Heon couldn't understand her behavior. Was she acting? Or was she genuinely this innocent? He quietly pulled his hands away. But Irina stepped even closer. Please, can you tell me how to become lucky like you? I'm begging you. Just then, a system notification suddenly appeared before Joo-Heon's eyes. Irina continued speaking. If it's money, I'll gladly pay you, no matter how much you want. At that exact moment, another notification appeared. Joo-Heon blinked. More messages rapidly appeared one after another. His eyes narrowed. The silver relic pill he had consumed earlier had granted him the tolerance ability. He had known the skill existed, but until now, he hadn't fully understood how it functioned. Now, as system messages continued appearing, everything suddenly became clear. His tolerance skill wasn't simply resisting poison. It was adapting, growing stronger every time his body endured a relic's harmful effects. Joo-Heon slowly smiled. He looked directly into Irina's eyes. Are you feeling all right? Irina immediately looked embarrassed. I'm sorry, my request was too sudden. She smiled awkwardly. Looking into her innocent eyes, Joo-Heon reached a conclusion. If his guess was correct, then there was no longer any reason to avoid her. Quite the opposite. Every second he remained near Irina, her relic's curse continued strengthening his tolerance skill. Not only that, her cursed aura was silently sabotaging everyone else around her, which meant every other bidder at the auction would gradually lose their luck. It was the perfect situation. He would strengthen himself, while weakening every competitor. Two birds with one stone. His eyes drifted toward another corner of the hall. Kwon Tae-jun stood there shouting furiously at one of his subordinates. What do you mean our factory in China caught fire? What exactly happened? His assistant Byung-sik trembled nervously. I only just received the report, Chairman. Kwon Tae-jun's expression darkened. What about today's shipment? Will everything still arrive on schedule? Joo-Heon quietly watched the scene unfold. Why are you still standing there? Kwon Tae-jun roared. Go! Call them back. I want answers immediately. Joo-Heon smiled to himself. Even Kwon Tae-jun had fallen within Irina's range. If this had happened during his previous life, Kwon would have immediately fled the area. That meant something important. He still didn't know about the existence of the goddess of misfortune. Joo-Heon's smile slowly widened. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. This girl was going to be far more useful than he had expected. Irina's face immediately brightened when Joo-Heon finally spoke. Your proposal doesn't sound so bad. She looked at him hopefully. Joo-Heon extended his hand. Obtaining good luck isn't easy. Irina nodded enthusiastically. I understand. Joo-Heon smiled. Then we'll need to discuss the details. He glanced toward the entrance to the auction hall. I'll be attending the auction shortly. Then he looked back at her. Would you mind accompanying me? I'll understand if you refuse. The tickets are incredibly expensive. Irina blinked before happily waving her handbag. That's not a problem at all. Joo-Heon smiled inwardly, just as he expected. For someone from the Hilton family, buying an auction ticket was no different from buying a packet of chewing gum. I'll go get one right away. Irina happily ran off toward the registration desk. Joo-Heon quietly watched her disappear into the crowd. He couldn't help wondering, what exactly turned this kind-hearted girl into the terrifying goddess of misfortune he remembered. A few minutes later, the auction hall lights dimmed. The auctioneer stepped onto the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 74th Midas Auction. Let the bidding begin. Joo-Heon and Irina now sat side by side among the audience. Looking around, Joo-Heon immediately noticed something interesting. The hall wasn't nearly as full as it had been earlier. After Irina entered the auction, guests had mysteriously begun leaving one after another. Some rushed outside to deal with unexpected emergencies. Others received disastrous phone calls. Within barely 3 minutes, nearly half the audience had disappeared. Even so, Kwon Tae-jun remained seated. Despite his factory burning in China, despite the enormous losses, he still refused to leave. That meant only one thing. There was something at this auction valuable enough for him to ignore everything else. Irina pointed excitedly toward the stage. That bottle is several hundred years old. It's a royal wine once owned by Russian nobility. She tilted her head. Aren't you going to bid on it? Joo-Heon smiled. No, the relic I'm after won't appear until later. It should be near the end of the first half of the auction. As he spoke, his eyes drifted back toward Irina. She looked completely different from the terrifying woman he remembered. There wasn't even a hint of malice in her expression. It didn't seem like she was pretending. He remembered everything she had told him earlier. The strangest part was, she genuinely didn't know anything about relics. Joo-Heon rubbed his chin thoughtfully. There was only one explanation. The relic had attached itself to Irina without her knowledge. His thoughts returned to the future once more. The ruthless goddess of misfortune hadn't always been that way. Originally, she had simply been a kind-hearted young woman. But after years of being constantly influenced by her relic, watching everyone around her suffer, her heart had eventually broken. The relic slowly corrupted her, turning a gentle girl into one of the most feared relic users in the world. Irina suddenly looked at Joo-Heon with a warm smile. Thank you. Joo-Heon looked at her curiously. For what? She gently brushed a strand of hair behind her ear before answering. For listening to me. And for believing what I said. She smiled softly. Just having someone I can honestly talk to makes me feel so much better. Joo-Heon watches Irina smile brightly after he reassures her. He casually tells her that helping her isn't nearly as difficult as she thinks. However, before he can relax, several system windows suddenly appear before his eyes. The notifications reveal that Irina's relic has grown dramatically stronger, completely unaware of what is happening. Irina laughs cheerfully and asks what he means by it not being difficult. She admits that hearing those words makes her genuinely happy. The moment her happiness grows, the entire building begins to tremble violently. Guests immediately panic, believing an earthquake has struck the auction hall. At the same time, another system message appears. The relic's area of effect has expanded. A terrifying wave of misfortune spreads throughout the building. Joo-Heon's relics begin suffering severe damage, while the cursed aura relentlessly attacks everything around him. His expression hardens as he realizes the situation has become even worse than before. Looking at the completely innocent Irina, Joo-Heon can't believe the truth. The happier she becomes, the stronger the curse surrounding her grows. Fortunately, another notification catches his attention. His tolerance skill is increasing at an incredible rate. Although the constant exposure is strengthening his resistance, he knows there's a limit. If Irina continues getting happier, every relic he possesses could end up completely destroyed. Trying to calm the situation, Joo-Heon quickly tells her not to celebrate just yet. He explains that it would be terrible if they failed to reach an agreement about their deal. His words immediately bring Irina back to reality. She suddenly remembers that they haven't even discussed the actual terms yet. With a serious expression, Joo-Heon asks her an important question. Even if she somehow became luckier, how could she be certain that everyone else around her would stop suffering from bad luck? Irina lowers her head. He's right. There is absolutely no guarantee that her misfortune would disappear just because her own luck improved. As her excitement fades, the system immediately reports that the relic's attack power has decreased. Joo-Heon quietly lets out a sigh of relief. Meanwhile, the auction host awkwardly laughs, before reassuring the audience that the shaking was only a minor tremor and everything is perfectly safe. He then resumes the auction, announcing that the current bid stands at $700,000 and asks whether anyone wishes to raise it. Bidding resumes almost instantly. However, thanks to Irina's relic, the atmosphere inside the hall becomes increasingly chaotic. Several wealthy bidders begin arguing over meaningless items. One arrogantly declares that if his rival doesn't like it, he should simply raise the bid. The other immediately fires back, insisting he isn't capable of outbidding him. Before long, both men are pointing fingers, yelling insults, and recklessly increasing their offers without thinking rationally. Watching the spectacle unfold, Joo-Heon quickly understands what's happening. Irina's relic is clouding everyone's judgment. The participants can no longer think clearly, looking at the depressed Irina sitting beside him. Joo-Heon suddenly comes up with a brilliant plan. If her curse can make everyone waste their fortunes, then there won't be many competitors left when the relics he actually wants finally appear. Turning towards her, he gently tells her not to be discouraged. After all, nobody can say for certain whether increasing her luck will continue affecting everyone else forever. Then, he smiles. It's time to begin their real negotiation. Irina eagerly listens as Joo-Heon explains that he truly knows a method capable of improving her luck. Her eyes widen. She nervously asks whether he's telling the truth. Joo-Heon simply smiles without answering directly. As the conversation continues, he deliberately tells her encouraging things that lift her spirits. He promises that he'll help solve all the problems that have haunted her for so long. Every reassuring word makes Irina happier. And every time her happiness increases, the cursed relic's aura grows even stronger. The disastrous effect immediately spreads throughout the auction hall. One by one, wealthy collectors completely lose control of themselves. People begin bidding insane amounts of money on ordinary relics they don't even need. They recklessly fight over almost every single lot, burning through their fortunes without hesitation. By the time the auction reaches its later stages, nearly everyone has already wasted enormous amounts of money. Now, whenever the relics Joo-Heon actually wants appear, there are barely any serious bidders left. He calmly raises his paddle and effortlessly purchases relic after relic. Only one person continues competing against him. Chairman Kwon Tae-jun. There are still several valuable relics the old man refuses to give up. Joo-Heon immediately realizes why. Unlike everyone else, Kwon Tae-jun isn't completely overwhelmed by Irina's curse. His powerful relic control allows him to resist part of its influence. Even so, Joo-Heon remains confident. His knowledge of relics is far superior. He already knows that many relics Kwon Tae-jun is desperately chasing aren't nearly as valuable as the ones Joo-Heon has chosen. As he quietly writes notes inside his notebook, he reviews everything he has already obtained. The Code of Hammurabi, Shakespeare's pen, Marie Antoinette's pendant. But despite collecting all of them, the divine-grade relic mentioned in the prophecy still hasn't appeared. Joo-Heon frowns. The auction is already approaching its conclusion. Just then, Irina nervously asks whether he truly intends to honor their agreement. She admits it almost feels as though he's simply buying time. Letting out a small sigh, Joo-Heon apologizes. He closes his notebook before telling her it's finally time to become serious. Once the auction ends, they'll move somewhere quieter and discuss every remaining detail of their deal. However, before either of them can stand, the auction host suddenly announces a special final event. He proudly reveals the last item of the evening. A small tree is wheeled onto the stage. The host introduces it as a mysterious almond tree that has recently become the center of enormous public attention. The instant Joo-Heon sees it, his eyes widen. Kwon Tae-jun immediately stares at it as well. Inside the flower pot stands a tiny tree, radiating an extraordinary presence. At that very moment, Joo-Heon hears a voice echo inside his mind. The tree complains that it's tired of surviving under such pitiful lighting before arrogantly demanding proper praise. Joo-Heon's heart skips a beat. He immediately recognizes it. A divine-grade relic. Not only that, it's an incredibly rare healing-type divine relic. Without hesitation, Joo-Heon rises to his feet and raises his bidding paddle. No matter what happens, he absolutely must obtain it. Almost simultaneously, Kwon Tae-jun raises his paddle as well. Both men instantly understand that neither intends to back down. Joo-Heon recalls the relic's history. Qin Shi Huang, the legendary emperor who sought eternal life, spent countless years sending his followers across the world searching for the mythical elixir of immortality. After an endless search, they finally discovered it. That legendary elixir was none other than this very tree. Memories from his previous life flood back. Back then, this relic belonged to Kwon Tae-jun. Because Joo-Heon's body was constantly being destroyed by powerful relics, he desperately needed the tree's miraculous fruit just to stay alive. Kwon Tae-jun exploited that weakness. Instead of giving him freedom, he only handed over the fruit whenever Joo-Heon obeyed his every command. Staring directly at the old man, anger burns inside Joo-Heon's eyes. This time, history will not repeat itself. No matter the cost, that relic will become his. Meanwhile, the auction host laughs loudly before joking that it's no surprise several gentlemen seem interested. After all, the fruit of the tree is famously believed to restore male vitality. Both Joo-Heon and Kwon Tae-jun instantly freeze in embarrassment. Without saying a word, Joo-Heon slowly raises his bidding paddle even higher. Beside him, Irina blushes awkwardly. The bidding begins at $200,000. Joo-Heon immediately raises it by another $100,000. Kwon Tae-jun answers without hesitation. Back and forth they go until the price quickly reaches $800,000. Then new bidders suddenly join the competition. Without warning, Kwon Tae-jun calmly announces an astonishing bid of $10 million while glaring directly at Joo-Heon. Joo-Heon instantly realizes the old man also knows this relic's true value. Clenching his fist, he understands one painful truth. No matter how much knowledge he possesses, he simply cannot compete with Kwon Tae-jun's financial power. Turning towards Irina, Joo-Heon quietly tells her that their agreement begins right now. He promises that if she helps him obtain this relic, he will personally find a way to solve the curse that's been tormenting her. In return, he asks her to purchase the relic for him. Irina smiles warmly. The proposal benefits both of them. Without hesitation, she agrees. Then, with complete confidence, she tells him not to worry about the money. The bidding continues climbing higher and higher. $20 million, $30 million, $50 million. The remaining guests stare in complete disbelief after Irina suddenly joins the bidding war. The host excitedly asks whether anyone else wishes to continue. Without even blinking, Kwon Tae-jun calmly raises the bid to an unbelievable $100 million. The entire auction hall falls silent. Everyone begins whispering about the unimaginable amount of money. Joo-Heon quietly looks away. He already knows the truth. Anything beyond $100 million is completely beyond his reach. From the very beginning, this was never a battle he could win with money alone. The host scans the silent room before announcing once again. The current highest bid is $100 million. Is there anyone else willing to bid? Irina calmly raised her hand and announced a bid of $300 million. The entire auction hall fell silent. Even the host looked stunned by the unbelievable amount. Joo-Heon smiled to himself. This was exactly the moment he had been waiting for. Kwon Tae-jun narrowed his eyes at Irina before slowly standing up. Staring directly at her, he calmly increased the bid to $320 million. Murmurs immediately spread throughout the room as everyone realized the auction had become a battle between two financial monsters. Without showing the slightest hesitation, Irina simply raised two fingers. $500 million. The room exploded into chaos. Even the host struggled to hide his disbelief. Kwon Tae-jun's expression darkened while his assistant Yoon Si-woo hurriedly stepped closer and urged him to stop. There's no point, Chairman. That woman is Irene Holten, the youngest daughter of one of the richest families in the world. The amount of money at her disposal is beyond imagination. Joo-Heon quietly watched the scene unfold with a satisfied smile. Still unwilling to lose, Kwon Tae-jun glared across the room, but after a long moment of silence, he finally lowered his hand. The auctioneer struck the hammer. The elixir tree was officially sold to Irene Holten for $500 million. A short while later, Joo-Heon and Irina sat together at a private table. Taking a sip of his whiskey, Joo-Heon looked at her and casually remarked that even for someone as wealthy as her, $500 million was an enormous amount of money. Irina simply smiled. To her, the price hardly mattered. Instead, she was far more interested in one thing. So, how are you going to solve my problem? She had been thinking about it the entire time. Maybe Joo-Heon planned to share some of his incredible luck with her. Or perhaps he owned some kind of lucky charm, like a rabbit's foot, that could cancel her bad fortune. Joo-Heon smiled faintly before shaking his head. He told her he had no lucky charm to give her. Irina's face immediately fell. So, you tricked me? She looked genuinely disappointed. Joo-Heon raised a hand to stop her. Not exactly. Hear me out first. Leaning forward, he folded his hands together and explained that her situation couldn't be solved with ordinary charms or lucky objects. The real problem was something much deeper. There's something inside your body that needs to be removed. Irina blinked in confusion. What do you mean? Joo-Heon explained that she simply needed to hand over one specific thing she possessed. Although he kept his calm expression, his thoughts were completely different. The only real solution was to remove the god-class relic of misfortune attached to her. If he could obtain that relic for himself, not only would Irina finally be freed from its curse, but he would also gain one of the strongest relics imaginable. It was the perfect outcome. Holding out his hand, Joo-Heon asked if she had ever noticed a strange object that constantly stayed with her no matter where she went. If she gave that object to him, her problem should disappear. Irina thought carefully before slowly shaking her head. She couldn't remember owning anything like that. Joo-Heon frowned. That's impossible. He asked whether she had ever tried throwing away everything she carried with her. Surely one of those items had to be the relic. Irina looked embarrassed. I already tried, but everything I threw away somehow came back. That answer caught Joo-Heon off guard. This wasn't behaving like a normal relic at all. After thinking for a moment, he leaned forward, again. Then, do you have a tattoo? A tattoo that suddenly appeared one day? Irene gasped. Her reaction was answer enough. Joo-Heon immediately understood. Relics were generally divided into two categories. The first type consisted of common relics, which anyone could use. However, they always came with limits on how much power they could unleash. The second type was personal relics. Whenever someone formed a bond with one of these relics, a mysterious tattoo would appear somewhere on their body. That mark served as proof that the relic had personally chosen its owner. Unlike common relics, personal relics had no usage limit, but only their chosen owner could ever use them. It was exactly the same phenomenon that had happened with Sasaki Yuka, whose prophecy relic had left a mark on her arm. Irina quietly opened her handbag. Meanwhile, Joo-Heon's thoughts grew even darker. Many of the most powerful relics from his previous life had belonged to the personal relic category. Irina then pulled out her phone. I can't really show you, but I do have a picture. She handed the phone over. The moment Joo-Heon looked at the image, his expression changed. Dark, smoky markings covered large portions of Irina's arms and body. His heart immediately sank. Irina noticed the sudden change on his face. What's wrong? Is something bad? Joo-Heon silently handed the phone back. He had finally figured it out. Irina wasn't carrying an ordinary personal relic. She was infected by a parasite relic. Parasite relics were among the rarest and most dangerous relics in existence. Instead of simply choosing an owner, they forcibly invaded a person's body and lived inside them. Because Irina's parasite was a god-class relic capable of spreading unimaginable misfortune, Joo-Heon had originally expected something like the legendary Golden Apple of Discord. Instead, he had no idea what relic this actually was. Looking at the frightened girl sitting across from him, Joo-Heon realized something important. Right now, he had no way to remove the relic from her body. Taking out a piece of paper, he quickly wrote down his phone number before handing it to her. I thought this would be simple, but I was wrong. When we have more time, let's meet again. We'll figure out a solution together. Irina accepted the note with a bright smile as Joo-Heon stood up to leave. If he couldn't obtain the relic today, then making Irene Holten his ally was the next best option. Building strong allies would prove invaluable in the future. Turning his attention toward the elixir tree, Joo-Heon smiled. Once the payment was completed, the tree would officially belong to him. The rest of the relics he had purchased could also be collected afterwards. Pulling out his phone, Joo-Heon called his companions, intending to have them bring the money. But no one answered. His expression instantly darkened. Something was wrong. Leaving a bag full of cash with those three idiots had been like leaving a fish beside a hungry cat. Without hesitation, Joo-Heon dialed another number. As soon as the call connected, he calmly said he had a small favor to ask. It's nothing difficult, and I'll make sure you're rewarded generously. Meanwhile, Hyun and the other two men were sprinting through a dark alley. The man in the purple shirt laughed nervously, saying that as long as they kept running, nobody would ever catch them. Another complained that the bags were unbelievably heavy and begged for a short break. Hyun finally stopped to catch his breath before grinning. Let's rest for a minute. He looked at the others. We still have the bags, right? The three of them burst into laughter. They were carrying enough money to live comfortably for the rest of their lives. But the celebration lasted only a second. Something slammed into the wall just inches from Hyun's head. The laughter vanished instantly. Joo-Heon slowly stepped out of the darkness. His eyes were filled with killing intent. You stole my money. Walking toward them, he casually pulled a golden throwing axe from his side. Hyun immediately began making desperate excuses. Joo-Heon raised the axe and coldly interrupted him. If you don't want your head flying off your shoulders, stop making those pathetic excuses. The terrified trio instantly began apologizing, screaming that they had made a terrible mistake. Joo-Heon ignored every word. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out what looked like an ordinary stone used for scrubbing dirt off shoe soles. The three men stared at it in complete confusion. Joo-Heon smirked. Look a little closer. The moment he squeezed it, a brilliant light erupted from the object. The rough stone transformed into an ancient stone tablet. It was none other than the legendary Code of Hammurabi, the ancient code of laws created by King Hammurabi of Babylon. A massive stone monument materialized behind Joo-Heon, radiating overwhelming authority. One of the most famous principles written within that code was simple: an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. It was an extraordinary defensive relic capable of returning any harm inflicted upon its owner back to the attacker. Hyun instinctively stumbled backwards until his back hit the wall. Joo-Heon calmly explained that this was one of the relics he had acquired during today's auction. Thanks to a small favor from one of the auction staff, he had managed to obtain it ahead of schedule. A satisfied smile spread across his face as the tablet's light illuminated him. Then, with an icy voice, he activated its power. An eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. If you chose to betray me, then it's only fair that you suffer the exact same betrayal yourselves.